Chapter 1176. When Zhou Yuxing woke up, he had a splitting headache. However, this wasn't the headache he had always had. Instead, the headache after a hangover made him feel relaxed. Gawain was not here, but he left a note. "I'm going to school. There's breakfast downstairs, you can eat it yourself. Also, I've prepared a change of clothes for you. Take a shower when you have time. You really stink. Remember to close the door when you go out. Gawain." Zhou Yuxing smiled subconsciously. Zhou Yuxing did not know if it was because he had slept too much, but he felt much better now. He looked around, hesitated, and began to look for something in Gawain's study. After a while, he found a small bottle under a drawer of a bookcase. Zhou Yuxing stuffed the bottle into his clothes, but after thinking for a while, he unscrewed the bottle and poured out some pills. He wrapped them in a tissue and put the bottle back. He went downstairs, took a shower, and ate something. Then, he left the house. He drove straight to the police station. There was no need to go back to his own home. Gawain's class was still the class with the most students. In a relatively serious place like the University of Political Science and Law, there were not many who could have such a celebrity effect. At first, the students did not know about Teacher Gawain's past. Later, the fact that Gawain was once the captain of the city's second criminal police team was dug up. The students gradually became familiar with his past achievements and cases he solved. A middle-aged man with a high level of knowledge and a lot of experience, who was not an armchair strategist and was very charming, could easily stimulate the feelings of the young girls. Of course, Gawain was honestly married, and there had never been any negative news about him. In Gawain's class, one could hear many practical cases, most of which were cases he had solved in the past. In the class, the students listened attentively, but Gawain could not concentrate completely no matter how hard he tried. He saw the last boy who had asked him the question yesterday sitting at the back of the classroom. He was alone and had a calm expression on his face. This made it difficult for Gawain to fully concentrate. However, his strong professional skills allowed Gawain to finish the class as planned. The bell for the end of class rang. As usual, the students left in a hurry, but there were also quite a number of students who came forward. Among the crowd, Gawain looked towards the back of the classroom. The quiet male student was no longer in sight. "Teacher Gao, what are you looking at?" the students asked curiously. They realized that Teacher Gao was a little absent-minded. This was a rare situation. Gawain pondered for a moment and suddenly asked, "Just now, do any of you know what class the boy who sat at the back, near the window, is from?" Just now? The students were suddenly stunned and seemed to have fallen into deep thought. Finally, a female student said slowly, "Teacher Gao, I remember that there was no one sitting in that seat just now." "No?" Gawain was taken aback. "Yeah, I don't think so. Be honest." The other girl also answered with certainty at this time. "Oh." Gawain nodded. "Maybe I saw wrongly. Students, I still have something to do. Let's call it a day. You can all leave." Gawain packed up his things and left the classroom quickly under everyone's gaze. Captain Zhou. In the corridor, the busy police officers all greeted Zhou Yuxing. Of course, they left quickly after greeting him. This was completely the behavior of a subordinate meeting a superior. No one wanted to talk much. This was different from Sir Ma in the bureau. Sir Ma was someone who could talk nonsense for half a day no matter who it was. Zhou Yuxing thought about the dismembered corpse case and walked quickly to the location of the special task force set up by the two teams. At this time, a police officer in the reception room found Zhou Yuxing. "Captain Zhou, there's someone outside who says he wants to see you." "See me?" Zhou Yuxing was stunned. "He said his name is Chun Mingming. He said you'll see him after hearing his name," the police officer said. Zhou Yuxing opened his mouth, looking hesitant. Finally, he said, "Take him to the reception room first, a separate room. I'll be right there." The police officer followed Zhou Yuxing's instructions and left first. After that, Zhou Yuxing quickly ran back to his office, took out a bag of things from the drawer, and ran to the bathroom. Here, he shaved the beard on his face clean, then tidied up his clothes and hair. In front of the reception room, Zhou Yuxing put his hand on the door handle. He paused for a moment, then took a deep breath and opened the door. Just as he had instructed, the police officer brought Chen Mingming into this room alone. "Why are you here alone?" Zhou Yuxing looked at the boy in front of him. He was not old, having just celebrated his 19th birthday. A year ago, he was admitted to the University of Political Science and Law. His grades were good and he liked to eat sweet things. He did not particularly hate anything, but he was relatively clean. Chen Mingming, his son. 3 months ago, after he divorced his wife, his son changed his surname and took after his mother's. At this moment, Chen Mingming was looking through the window at the police officers walking back and forth in the courtyard of the police station. He did not turn around when he heard the question. He just said indifferently, "The people here walk back and forth quickly. I heard that there was a dismembered body case yesterday. You must have a deadline to solve the case. Look at how busy you are." Zhou Yuxing frowned. He had always been unaccustomed to Chen Mingming's attitude. "This is our internal matter. You're just a student." Zhou Yuxing snorted. "Didn't I say that you can look for me during working hours?" Chen Mingming turned around and looked at his father with his head tilted. He said expressionlessly, "I went to your house and found that the fish tank was gone. You weren't there either. I tried to call you, but no one picked up the whole night. Later, the person who answered was Teacher Gao. He said that you were drunk and asleep. I could only come here to look for you." "You? Why are you looking for me?" Zhou Yuxing turned his head and saw the chair beside him. He simply sat down. "Sit down and talk. Don't stand there." Chen Mingming shook his head and said, "I'm leaving later. I just came to tell you that I'm leaving next month. Mom has arranged everything. Next month, I'll emigrate to Canada with her." Zhou Yuxing opened his mouth, wanting to say something. In the end, he could only say, "So soon? I remember that you and Mom officially divorced 3 months ago." Chen Mingming said indifferently, "And before this, you've been living separately for a year. Do you think it's fast? Why do you want to go abroad? Isn't it good here?" Zhou Yuxing frowned and said, "Gaowen took you in as a student. Can't Gaowen teach you? It's not worse in China than abroad. You're in a foreign country and unfamiliar with life. I really don't know what your mother is thinking." "No, I don't agree. I'll talk to her about this matter later." At this moment, Chen Mingming suddenly took out his phone and handed it over. "What are you doing?" Zhou Yuxing asked subconsciously. Chen Mingming said indifferently, "Didn't you say that you wanted to talk to Mom? If you call her, she probably won't pick up. Why don't you use mine? I'll help you." Address book Mom call. Seeing the interface change on the phone screen, Zhou Yuxing slapped Chen Mingming's hand away. With a bang, the phone flew to the ground. He said angrily, "It's not up to you to worry about adult matters. Is that so?" Chen Mingming held his wrist and glanced at Zhou Yuxing. Then, he picked up the phone on the ground and walked out without looking back. "Goodbye, Captain Zhou." "Wait!" Zhou Yuxing opened his mouth, but in the end, he couldn't say anything. He sat alone in the reception room and covered his face. He suddenly felt his head start to hurt again. It was as if there was a bomb in his head that could explode at any time. Zhou Yuxing's face suddenly turned pale. He subconsciously reached into his pocket and took out a ball of paper. He unwrapped it, took out a pill, and swallowed it. Chen Mingming walked alone in the corridor. Although the police officers passing by found it strange, they didn't ask much. It was impossible for an idle person to walk in casually. Since he came in, he naturally had a legitimate reason. Moreover, everyone in the station was busy at this time, so no one cared too much about this young child. Chen Mingming suddenly stopped and looked at the bulletin board hanging in the corridor. Outstanding Police Officer of the Month, Superior Official, Recently Solved Case, etc. Chen Mingming saw a commendation about solving a case. The person who solved the case was Zhou Yuxing, and the criminal was an online car-hailing driver. After violating the victim, he threw her body under the bridge. Chen Mingming looked at the criminal's name and blinked. At this time, a few words suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. Chen Mingming's pupils suddenly contracted. After a while, Zhou Yuxing felt that his headache had passed and rushed to the office of the task force. At this moment, Ma Haud was eating instant noodles while reading the information that was constantly being reported to him. Seeing that someone was coming, Sir Ma looked up and was stunned for a moment. Then, he nodded. Yes, although you still look like a salted fish, at least you're much better than yesterday. Zhou Yuxing pretended that he didn't hear it. He sat down and grabbed a document in front of Ma Haud. He began to read it and asked, "Is there any new progress? We checked the information of all the major bus stations. During this time, there was no information about Wang Liang's ticket purchase." At this time, Ma Haud said casually, "We also checked the location of the phone. This Wang Liang didn't leave this place at all. He was hiding." As he said this, Ma Haud took out another document and threw it in front of Zhou Yuxing. "Last night, we organized an operation. According to the location of Wang Liang's phone, we found an abandoned building." "You caught him?" Zhou Yuxing looked up. Sir Ma shook his head. "We found the phone, but we didn't find the person." Zhou Yuxing frowned. Sure enough, this Wang Liang is very suspicious. Not only did he resign, but he also pretended that he went home and hid a corpse at home. Should we directly issue a warrant for his arrest? I'm going to ask the director to approve the document. Sir Ma stood up while wiping his mouth. He held a cigarette in his mouth and cursed before lighting it. "Damn it! You made me eat instant noodles." Zhou Yuxing looked at him and smiled. This Ma Haud was like a dead fish in the police station. He didn't want to make progress, but when it came to cases, he was one of the most diligent ones. Maybe he didn't leave the whole night? "Sir Ma, Sir Zhou." At this time, Lin Feng rushed in, looking even more hurried. "There's a new discovery." "What?" Ma Haud frowned. Lin Feng said quickly, "Xiaobao has confirmed the identity of the victim in the dismembered body case. The victim is Wang Liang." Ma Haud opened his mouth and the cigarette fell. "What? The victim is Wang Liang?" Lin Feng nodded. "Yes. In the body in the freezer, there was a small piece of intact finger bone and a steel nail. The victim should have undergone surgery. We found the serial number of the steel nail, then contacted the corresponding hospital and found the patient's personal information. It's Wang Liang. Are you sure it's the Wang Liang we're looking for, and not another Wang Liang with the same name?" Sir Ma opened his mouth and asked subconsciously. "Yes, it's the Wang Liang we're looking for. It's over." When Ma Haud heard this, he sat down. "This is great, we wasted the whole day's effort." Zhou Yuxing frowned. "Captain Ma, since we can confirm the identity of the victim is Wang Liang, then the case is actually much clearer." Ma Haud turned his head and thought for a moment, then nodded. "That's right. At least we can start with Wang Liang. Wang Liang's body was dismembered like this. The murderer is either a psychopath or someone who has a deep hatred for Wang Liang. Let's start with Wang Liang's possible enemies first." Zhou Yuxing nodded. "Lin Feng, according to the information, this Wang Liang cheated several women of their money because of fraud, right? Is there another case that was reported, but couldn't be filed because of insufficient evidence?" Lin Feng quickly flipped through the information. "Yes, the woman who reported the case is surnamed Zhang Xiaoqin. She works as a hostess in a nightclub. Investigate this Zhang Xiaoqin first." Ma Haud directly ordered. Also, not only this Zhang Xiaoqin, but also other people who had financial disputes with Wang Liang, as well as personal grudges. "Damn, we'll have to work overtime again." At this moment, "Oh no, oh no!" Just as they were talking, a police officer rushed in a panic, scaring them. "Someone's dead!" Sir Ma, Sir Zhou, someone's dead. Another murder case? Ma Howd was shocked. No, no, someone's dead in the detention center. A prisoner's dead. The police officer looked at Zhou Yuxing, his face full of horror. Captain Zhou, it's the online car-hailing driver you just caught. Zhou Yuxing frowned. He committed suicide? The police officer's expression was strange, and he said in a panic, It seems that he was shot. Chapter 1177. The dead suspect had just confessed, so he hadn't been transferred to the procuratorate and was still in the detention center. This was a serious matter that forced Ma Howd and Zhou Yuxing to put aside the dismembered corpse case and rush to the scene. In the detention center, at least in the cell where the dead e-hailing driver was, it was terribly silent. The body of the deceased began to be examined on the spot. And after that, everyone was ordered to keep their mouths shut. This matter must not be spread to the society. Once the news that a suspect was killed in the tightly guarded detention center spread, it would be another fatal blow to the credibility of the system. How is it? How's the examination going? Sir Ma walked back and forth outside the cell anxiously, looking inside from time to time. At this time, an inspector came out with a strange look, as if he was thinking about something and looked hesitant. Just tell me what you found, Zhou Yuxing said impatiently. The inspector frowned and said, The only thing that can be confirmed now is that this is indeed a gunshot wound. A frontal gunshot wound directly through the forehead, but what? The inspector said incredulously, We didn't find the bullet. Zhou Yuxing and Sir Ma were stunned at the same time. Zhou Yuxing asked subconsciously, What do you mean? The inspector said slowly, I just found a bullet hole in the forehead, which means the bullet definitely didn't penetrate, but the bullet disappeared in his brain. I really can't find it. What happened? Ma Howd opened his mouth. Since the bullet didn't penetrate, it naturally stayed in the body, but the bullet that should have stayed in the body disappeared? Could it be that the murderer took the bullet out again? A policeman next to him said whimsically. Ma Howd knocked him. After you killed someone, you still have the mood to take out the bullet for the dead? Maybe the murderer has such a hobby? The inspector shook his head at this time. Except for the wound caused by the bullet hole, there are no other wounds that can rule out the action of taking out the bullet. Could it be an ice bullet? Some special ice bullets, after entering the human body, melted and disappeared? The policeman continued to be whimsical, but he suddenly found that he was surrounded by caring eyes. Did I say something wrong? The policeman asked timidly. Ma Howd sighed and waved his hand. Go to the surveillance room and see what they found. I really don't have the mood and time to explain to you. After sending the whimsical policeman away, Sir Ma couldn't help pinching his eyebrows. Old Zhou, what do you think? Zhou Yuxing thought for a while and said, Now, let's put it aside how the bullet disappeared. The important thing is to find out how the murderer committed the murder. This cell doesn't even have a vent, let alone a skylight. If he wanted to commit the murder, he could only do it in front of the iron bars. And as you can see, he's not the only prisoner here. There are also prisoners in the neighboring cells, but they said that they didn't see anyone pass by. Do you think this is possible? Ma Howd nodded. The prisoners in the left and right cells didn't know the dead one. They had no enmity with the dead one and had no motive or reason to provide a false confession. This is too strange. If the surveillance results prove that nothing happened, I should go to the temple and check it out. Sir Ma, I'm afraid you really have to go to the temple. Lin Feng ran back with a pale face, holding a tablet in his hand. Look, a camera happened to record this scene. In the cell, the suspect was walking back and forth with his hands crossed and his head lowered. It could be seen that he was very depressed and uneasy at this time. But all of a sudden, he fell down, without any sign, without any touch from others, and then blood gushed out from his forehead. All of a sudden, a chill ran down everyone's spine. These were two black Volkswagen cars with letters. The car slowly stopped in a high-end residential area. Two men were sitting in the back seat of the car. One had an extraordinary bearing, while the other had a shrewd and capable appearance. Second young master, that Master Chin lives in this place. At this time, the shrewd and capable man rolled down the window, looking at the small villa in front of him. I've made an appointment, shall we go in now? The shrewd and capable man nodded. At this time, the shrewd and capable man directly got off the car, walked to the door of the villa, and pressed the doorbell. While waiting, he looked back at the shrewd and capable man who was getting off the car. Seeing Zhong Luochen's appearance, Qing Yun frowned slightly, but he hid it well and didn't let his current boss, Zhong Luochen, notice it. This second young master of the Zhong family was going to be disabled. No one knew when the second young master had started to do some strange things. In this half a year, who knew how many charlatans he had found? Some of them pretended to be gods and ghosts, and some of them were just magic tricks. Did the second young master really think that he could become an immortal? Not only that, Zhong Luochen even spent a huge amount of money to set up a private company, which didn't produce anything, but only knew how to study bioelectric waves and the human body's potential all day long. As a matter of fact, when he heard that there was a mysterious Master Chen, he immediately asked him to find him. Qing Yun didn't know whether the second young master was really stupid, or just pretending to be stupid. Now the Zhong family was dominated by the eldest young master. Before the new year, the third young lady went to South America and came back. For some reason, she resigned from all her positions and lived in her own private villa. It was said that she rarely saw people these days. Qing Yun hadn't been able to contact the third young lady for a long time. In the past, he could still get some extra income from the third young lady by reporting information about the second young master. But now, the source of extra income was cut off, and the eldest young master was the dominant one. At this moment, he really couldn't rely on the eldest young master. How many people were waiting in front of him to ride on the golden thigh of the Zhong family's third generation? Helplessly, Qing Yun could only try his best to maintain his rice bowl by Zhong Luochen's side. At least, this second young master was really rich, super rich, even if he was stupid. At this moment, a servant came to open the door. Qing Yun was a little unhappy, thinking that this so-called Master Chen was so arrogant. Although the second young master had lost some power, he was still the second young master of the Zhong family's third generation, who didn't run to him on their own accord when he wanted to see them. "Are you Mr. Qing Yun?" the servant asked indifferently. "I am. Where is Master Chen? We have an appointment." Qing Yun narrowed his eyes. The servant still said indifferently, "Master Chen is still taking a nap, but he told me that if you come, you can come in and wait." It would have been better if the servant didn't say that, but Qing Yun got angry. He thought that when he was in the capital, those famous young masters in the capital were not polite to him. Brother Yun, this brother Yun, this brother Yun, this brother Yun. How could he be stopped by a servant in this broken place in the south? "How dare you make our young master wait?" Qing Yun was furious. "Don't you know that if you offend our young master, no matter if you are Master Chen or Immortal Chen, you will have to bear the consequences?" The servant shrugged and said, "That's the rule of our master. It doesn't matter if it's a rich businessman or a high official. If you want to wait, you can leave. We don't need a rich man like you." Damn it! Qing Yun suddenly opened his eyes wide. "In that case, let's go in and wait." Unexpectedly, Zhong Luochen walked over slowly and said indifferently, "Please lead the way, little brother." "That's more like it. Come in." The servant nodded and turned around, walking directly into the villa. Qing Yun was a little angry at this moment. "Second young master, this Master Chen is not afraid of you. He probably doesn't know who you are." Zhong Luochen said indifferently, "Isn't it normal for a capable person to have some temper, some strange rules, and some arrogance? If this Master Chen is really a capable person, I don't mind waiting for him." Qing Yun felt that as a golden chick, He really needed to remind this second young master that most of the people in this world were swindlers. Therefore, he said in a roundabout way, "Second young master, it's been so many days, but we haven't found anyone capable. You see, these are all tricks of the Jianghu. I think this Master Chen might be another swindler. Yes or no, let's wait and see," Zhong Luochen said, and walked directly into the villa. After that, several bodyguards in black suits followed behind Zhong Luochen and walked in quickly. Qing Yun shook his head and sighed. The second young master was really stupid and hopeless. Speaking of this Master Chen, he also had a lot of background. He was the personal disciple of Master Huang. This Master Huang had a lot of fame in the surrounding dozens of cities, especially in the circle of rich businessmen and some officials' wives. Fortune-telling, geomancy array, seeking luck and avoiding misfortune. It was just that Master Huang hadn't received any guests for a long time. It was as if he had evaporated from the world. Master Huang had disappeared, but his disciple was still there. Moreover, this second Master Chen had learned a lot from Master Huang. Although his fame in the circle was not as great as Master Huang's, his reputation had gradually spread. Besides, even if he couldn't find Master Huang, it was better to find his disciple than nothing, wasn't it? Upstairs in the villa, Chen Er lifted a corner of the curtain and, in fact, he had already seen clearly what happened in front of the door. After they entered the villa, Chen Er was not in a hurry to go downstairs. Instead, he slowly opened a bottle of red wine and tasted it himself. In fact, Chen Er was very satisfied with his current life. His master, Master Huang, half a year ago, suddenly broke his cultivation and almost went blind. After that, he went to Wudong alone and hadn't come back until now. Master Huang didn't have many relatives, but Chen Er estimated that this old lecher must have left a lot of playboys outside, but didn't tell others. This old guy left quickly and neatly. About 4 or 5 months ago, he even called back and asked Chen Er to donate all his property to charity. Chen Er had been following this old guy all these years and tried every means to please him. Other people's sons might not be as good as him, but he still didn't get the true inheritance of this old guy. At best, he only learned some superficial knowledge. Of course, he didn't have the ability to do fortune-telling and geomancy. But if it was the usual arrangement of peach blossom array, seeking luck and avoiding misfortune, he could do it. Besides, after following this old guy for so many years, he had learned some words to fool people. Since this old guy left him like this, Chen Er felt that he didn't need to continue thinking about this master-disciple relationship. Old guy, do you think that without you, Chen Er, can't do it?" Chen Er sneered. "Your villa is now mine. Now everyone calls me Master Chen. Who still remembers you, Master Huang? Old guy. Even if I don't rely on you, I can still do well." Chen Er slowly finished the glass of red wine and then began to tidy up his clothes. After dawdling for nearly an hour, he went downstairs unhurriedly. Chen Er slowly walked down the stairs and saw that in the living room, a young man with an extraordinary temperament was resting on the sofa with his eyes closed. Behind him stood 3 strong men in black suit. There was also a smart and capable-looking guy who was sitting there with an impatient face. From time to time, he would glance at the young man with an extraordinary bearing. Chen Er frowned. He didn't know why, but he suddenly had a feeling of discomfort. However, in the past 6 months, he had directly faced many rich businessmen and some small officials, so he had already developed an extraordinary temperament. Chen Er clasped his hands behind his back and walked slowly to the front of the crowd. The young man who was resting with his eyes closed still didn't open them. Chen Er frowned slightly and then said indifferently, "That is Mr. Ching." At this time, Qing Yun looked Chen Er up and down and frowned. "You are Master Chen? So young?" Chen Er chuckled and said, "There is no end to learning. Who told you that you can't be a master at a young age?" At this time, Zhong Luochen held his forehead and slowly rubbed his forehead. He didn't open his eyes and just said indifferently, "Master Chen, I have an appointment today. I have spent enough time with you. I came in person to prove my sincerity. Now it's your turn." "You are Mr. Qing Yun?" Chen Er narrowed his eyes. Zhong Luochen waved his hand and said coldly, "Try him. Stay if you have the ability." The three strong men behind him slowly walked out with hideous smiles on their faces. Chapter 1178. Wait a minute. Master Chen Er restrained his panic in an instant. As a person who walked in the circle of many rich businessmen and some officials, the demeanor of a master was necessary. If he couldn't even scare people, how could he talk about business in the future? The rich man in front of him should not be a local. Chen Er had investigated all the famous local bigwigs over the years. But as the saying goes, a strong dragon can't suppress a local snake. With his background and resources in the local area, Chen Er asked himself if there was anything wrong, and there was still someone who was willing to protect him. The key was that distant water couldn't put out a nearby fire. "Master Chen, are you afraid?" A man in a black suit at this time clenched his fists at this time. The cracking of his knuckles and the cold smile on his face could make people feel a sense of oppression. Chen Er stood with his hands behind his back and said indifferently, "I'm just a physiognomist, not a boxer. You want to test my ability? Do you want to test my boxing skills? If you want to find someone who knows kung fu, then go ahead. Don't waste your time here." At this time, the three bodyguards looked at Zhong Luochen together. They saw that Zhong Luochen didn't have the slightest intention to speak. He still closed his eyes and slowly rubbed his forehead, as if he was indifferent to this. "Do it." The bodyguards snorted coldly. Chen Er's heart skipped a beat, thinking that these guys wanted to use force. He snorted coldly, "In that case, let's go outside the courtyard. I don't want the place where I live to be in a mess." Then, Chen Er ignored the eyes of the crowd and went straight into the outside garden. The garden was not big, but it was definitely not small. At a glance, it was about 50 or 60 square meters. Moreover, in the middle of the garden, there were wooden piles of different length. The tallest of these wooden piles was almost a meter high, and the shortest of these wooden piles was a foot high. Chen Er stepped on the wooden staff vigorously like a nimble monkey. In the blink of an eye, he had climbed to the top of the tallest wooden stake. "Gentlemen, please! Plum blossom pile? I've also practiced it." A bodyguard sneered, rushed directly to the wooden stake, and flew to attack Chen Er. At this moment, Chen Er's expression was indifferent. Everyone in the outside world knew that he was Huang Banqian's disciple, but very few people knew that many years ago, he had followed Huang Banqian as his bodyguard. Before he had become Huang Banqian's servant, Chen Er had been a genuine successor of the plum blossom pile fist. Many traditional fist techniques had been lost, and most of the ones that had been passed down had lost their essence. They were good for strengthening the body, but in actual combat, most of them were more theoretical than practical. Chen Ershi wasn't able to learn the profound feng shui from Huang Banqian, but he did learn a lot about the theories of the 5 elements and 8 trigrams. Inspired by this experience, he was able to deduce some of the ancient essence of the traditional plum blossom pile fist. He was able to easily defeat an ordinary martial artist. However, no matter how high one's martial arts skills were, they were still afraid of bullet. There were many examples of people who had been killed by a single shot after decades of hard work. Although Chen Er had some talent in fist techniques, he indulged in a life of luxury and did not immerse himself in traditional technique. Even so, it was more than enough for him to deal with the 3 strong bodyguards in front of him. At this moment, the 3 bodyguards had already stepped onto the plum blossom pile. Together with Chen Er, they were exchanging blows on the plum blossom pile. At a glance, one could tell that they weren't sparring with ordinary people. Zhong Luochen slowly opened his eyes. It had already been more than a minute since they had started sparring. The three siblings of the third generation of the Zhong family had been arranged by the old master to train in the army a few years ago. They had also been trained by experts in combat in the army. Their combat skills might not be at the level of experts, but their eyesight had been trained. These three bodyguards were also selected from the army. Although they weren't familiar with the terrain of the plum blossom pile, their balance and ability to fight on the spot weren't bad. Although Chen Er had the advantage of the terrain, he didn't have any real skills. He really couldn't suppress the siege of the three people. Let's stop. After another 2 minutes, the three bodyguards were completely at a disadvantage. Seeing that they couldn't hold on for much longer, Zhong Luochen slowly opened his mouth and ordered. They were all from the army and had an almost instinctive ability to carry out orders. As soon as they heard the order, they quickly retreated from the plum blossom pile and returned to Zhong Luochen's side. At this time, Chen Er also walked down from the plum blossom pile. He had been in the army for more than half a year. After swallowing the inheritance of Master Huang, he had almost abandoned his martial arts. Although he practiced on a daily basis, it was only to the extent of sweating. After a big fight, he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. "Mr. Cheng, are you satisfied?" Chen Er chuckled at this time. Master Chen, known as the king of tough acting, had been well versed in the art of acting tough for more than half a year. Zhong Luochen didn't intend to explain the misunderstanding to Chen Er himself. At this time, he just looked at Chen Yun and said casually, "Chen Yun, find a time to take him back to the company and set up a few arrays. Let's see how it works." After saying this, Zhong Luochen didn't continue to pay attention to him and left with the bodyguard. He naturally had a set of standards to judge whether a person was capable or not. If this Chen Er showed weakness in front of the bodyguards and showed a timid appearance, he naturally wouldn't be able to do anything. A real capable person would naturally have a bearing, but this Chen Er didn't have the ability to learn feng shui. With his plum blossom pile technique, he was qualified to be a high-level fighter. But this type of master, as long as Zhong Luochen wanted, he could find a company in minutes. As he said, he came in person and waited for an hour, which had already proved his sincerity. Next, it was time to see if Chen Er's performance was worthy of his sincerity. "You are Mr. Cheng?" Chen Er frowned at this time. At this time, only Cheng Yun was left in the room. At this time, Cheng Yun smiled and suddenly had a new view of this Master Chen. "Little guy, when it comes to showing off, I, Cheng Yun, am also a master of this generation." At this time, Cheng Yun chuckled and sat down. His palm swept the creases on his thighs and said with a faint smile, "Master Chen Er, have you heard of the Zhong family in Xiangshan of the capital city?" After Zhong Luochen went out, he quickly got on the car. The driver in the front turned around and asked him where he was going next. Zhong Luochen thought for a while and said slowly, "Go to Miss Mo's studio." The driver nodded and thought in his heart, these days, the second young master went to Miss Mo's studio every few days. It seems that he is really interested in this Miss Mo. It was said that the marriage between the second young master and the Miss of the Zhang family seemed to be a little delayed. But the second young master didn't seem to be in a hurry. These days, except for official business, he basically didn't have much contact with the Zhang family. As for this Miss Mo, her identity was a bit mysterious. Even with the means of the Zhong family, they actually couldn't find out the origin of this Miss Mo. They only knew that she appeared in this city half a year ago. As for where she was before, what she did, her parents and so on, it was all a blank. However, that Miss Mo was indeed a rare beauty. Wearing a black dress, she was mysterious and elegant. The so-called studio was a ceramic art studio in the recently completed Creative Park. Because it was newly completed, many buildings in the Creative Park were still empty. But this ceramic art studio was quite popular. Most of the students in the academy came for this mysterious and beautiful landlady. Basically, this was the first impression of many students to this landlady. However, most people only came for the lady boss's beauty. Very few people truly appreciated the lady boss's pottery skills. There were many young masters who pursued Miss Mo, but there were only a few who could really catch her fancy. Even so, those young masters who were usually domineering were not as violent as usual. They seemed to be adhering to the old rules and were extremely polite in the studio. Today, Miss Mo still didn't appear in the classroom. The only one who taught here was an honest ceramic auntie who was about 40 years old. There was also a room for Miss Mo upstairs. That was the place she usually created. It was said that in such a long time, only one student could go up there. The name of the piece, Chin Sang Tune. Of course, it was not a live performance. It was just a sound played through the sound system. There was plenty of sunlight here, and one could see the whole river outside the window. When Zhong Luochen stepped into the private workshop upstairs, he was attracted by the music inside. It wasn't because of the elegance of the decoration, nor was it because of the pleasant scenery, but because of the pair of hands that were molding the shape of the clay. It was just a coincidence that he found this place. Zhong Luochen thought that he wouldn't be attracted by women again in his life. Even that Miss Zhang, he didn't know when it started, but his interest in her had greatly weakened. Later on, it was to the extent that he could barely see her. Now, he was about to erase this outstanding woman from his heart. But that day by the river, the black dress that was digging clay at the edge of the river bank was still unforgettable. The students downstairs all thought that she was a celestial being, but Zhong Luochen thought that she was rare in the world, unattainable and unattainable. Miss Mo's ceramic skills were very high, especially in the aspect of molding clay dolls. They were vivid and lifelike, as if she had personally given these clay dolls a real soul. Swallow grass like silk, Chin sang low green branches. When the day of the husband's return is the day when the concubine's intestines are broken. The spring breeze doesn't know each other, why enter Luoho? The soft voice. The voice made the pair of hands that were molding clay stop. The beautiful eyes were pleasing to the eye. Zhong Luochen slowly walked in and smiled. Miss Mo, are you homesick? Mr. Zhong. Miss Mo in front of him nodded slightly. Please sit down. Today, are you still doing the homework from last time? No hurry. Zhong Luochen sat down. There was a seat that belonged to him not long ago. Miss Mo, did you like the clay I asked you to send last time? Miss Mo smiled slightly. It's top-grade kaolin clay. Thank you, Mr. Zhong. Zhong Luochen said indifferently, I'm just borrowing flowers to pay respects to Buddha. Besides, kaolin clay isn't rare. It's not considered a valuable item. Miss Mo didn't say much. Mr. Zhong, let's begin. Okay. Zhong Luochen nodded and began to unbutton his sleeves. Then, he grabbed a handful of clay from the cabinet next to him and began to seep water. He glanced at the clay model on Miss Mo's plate and suddenly asked, Miss Mo, this seems to be from last time? Are you not satisfied? Why did you start again? I'm just not satisfied. Miss Mo looked at the clay model that was only a simple human figure. She couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. There's something that Miss Mo can't do? Zhong Luochen was very curious. He had seen with his own eyes that Miss Mo's superb memory could create a masterpiece that could be passed down from generation to generation in a short period of time. Miss Mo lowered her face, and her hair covered half of her face. I forgot his name, and I can't remember what he looks like. I'll probably only remember it when we meet again. Zhong Luochen could clearly feel that this woman's thoughts were never here. She was always on the bridge, and he was under the bridge in a boat, slowly crossing it. He took a look and gradually left. Mr. Zhong, continue. I still have something to do. Miss Mo wiped her hands clean. I'll come again later to see your work today. Zhong Luochen didn't ask her to stay and just watched her leave. Other than him, there was no one else in the classroom. He slowly mixed the soil and his mind gradually sank. However, the clay model couldn't take shape, a shape that he was satisfied with. He sighed and looked out the window with a complicated expression. Will I never get love? Miss Mo left the studio from another passageway and drove herself. Not long after, she arrived at a small house not far from the creative garden. She carried 2 big bags from the car, opened the door and walked in. Inside the house was another world. It was like an amusement park, with slides built along the roof beams, rockery, and a pool. A green blanket was spread on the floor. Inside the house there was a group of children. The oldest was only a few years old, and the youngest was still crawling. They were currently playing around. Among the children there was a girl who was slightly older, but her eyes were bright red. At this moment she was chasing after a fat guy. "Piggy, you're disobedient again. Go take a bath. Or I'll tell Sister Blackwater when she comes back." The fat guy immediately grimaced and climbed up the wall. Seeing this, Miss Mo smiled. She put down the things in her hands and said softly, "Well, come and eat." "Wow. Sister Blackwater is back." The little girl immediately jumped to Miss Mo's side and hugged her. "Sister Blackwater, you have the smell of that human again. Did he come to see you again today?" Miss Mo. Blackwater smiled and put down the little girl in her arms, patting her little head. At this time, a group of children demon cubs gathered around Blackwater. Blackwater slowly sat down. Her long black dress spread out like a black dahlia flower. "This human is so annoying. Sister Blackwater, do you want to eat him?" This kind of talk was naturally from the biggest piggy. The older girl was the big sister of the group. Hearing this, she knocked the piggy's head. "Are you stupid? Many humans come to find trouble with Sister Blackwater. It's because of humans that those guys become well-behaved. If we eat him, we'll have a hard time. You're a pig. I'm a pig. Eat, 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 that's all. Anyway, I don't like that human." The piggy smacked his lips and hummed, "When I grow up, I'll eat him first." Chapter 1179. The red Mini was driving slowly on the street. Renziling was thinking about the call with Ma Howd a few minutes ago. In fact, during this time, Renziling had restrained herself a lot. She didn't embarrass Ma Howd too much. Even if the dismembered corpse case shocked the whole city, she only found Ma Howd 2 days later. She called him instead of going to the Criminal Police Brigade's first team department. "No comment, really no comment. Madam, I'm so busy here. I really don't have time to talk to you. The dismembered corpse case is fine, but now you want to add another one. It's nothing. Anyway, if you're really bored, you can secretly take photos of the interactions between the senior officials and their mistresses. I really don't want to talk about it." Basically, there were only a few things that could make Ma Howd refuse her in this way. She was afraid that something serious must have happened. Nanny Wren certainly didn't expect that the whole police station was about to explode at this time, because a suspect died in the detention center. This matter was so bad and serious that it made the Criminal Police Brigade in this city face an unprecedented major crisis. Thinking about it, Renziling didn't want to drive. She simply parked the car at a temporary parking spot on the street and picked up the phone. "Hello, Lizzie. I won't go back at noon." While telling Lizzie what to do, Renziling wondered if she should find some familiar people in Jianghu to ask if anything special had happened in the past 2 days. But before she finished the call, Nanny Wren hurriedly hung up the phone, because she saw an unexpected person through the front windshield of the car. Holding a simple shopping basket in her hand, she just walked out of a supermarket slowly. Her long golden hair was like silk behind her. She was wearing an intellectual beige windbreaker. Who else could it be if she wasn't Yu Yi, her son's girlfriend? So Nanny Wren instantly put all the unhappiness aside. This was the real girlfriend that her son had brought home and admitted personally. She was his future daughter-in-law. Yu Yi. Nanny Wren happily rolled down from the carriage and rushed across the road without saying anything. Her smile was so bright that it was as if she had seen gold. "Miss Wren." There was a faint smile on Miss Maid's face at this time, and her eyes showed a little bit of surprise. Nanny Wren might be too excited. At this time, she grabbed the maid's hand without saying anything and scolded, You haven't come to my house to see me for so long. If you didn't come, I would have thought that you had dumped my little brat." The servant girl said softly, "Miss Wren, don't worry. I will always be by his side." What a good kid. Nanny Wren had always been friendly, not to mention that she was an acquaintance. At this time, she naturally held the servant girl's arm. "Come, don't stand there. Let's find a place to sit down and have some tea. Are you free?" "Of course." The servant girl pointed to the front and said, "I know there's a shop that makes delicious cakes. Miss Wren, do you want to try it?" "I'm reducing." "Well, eat. Let's go eat." Nanny Wren nodded without saying anything. "Also, don't call me Miss Wren. Call me Mom." "Well, call me Sister Wren first." "Sister Wren." Hey! They were like a pair of beautiful sisters, but the pedestrians on the road didn't seem to notice them. The automatic door of the supermarket opened automatically at this time. Taisetsu walked out with 2 big bags of tape in his hand. Taisetsu, who didn't do anything for the time being, was called out by the servant girl early in the morning and became a coolie to carry the bags. Looking at the servant girl and Nanny Wren walking side by side intimately in front of him, Taisetsu opened his mouth. "What the? Sister, you did this on purpose, right?" Taisetsu sighed in his heart. He carried 2 full bags, flew into the sky, and slowly floated toward the shop. Although the University of Political Science and Law had a serious atmosphere, there were many quiet places that could create an ambiguous atmosphere. For example, in the sports equipment room. A slightly heavy breathing sound came from the corner of the wooden horse. Obviously, the young man and woman were secretly tasting the forbidden fruit at this time. The girl's clothes were messy, but she closed her mouth. At the same time, her neck was forcefully raised, making the outline of her collarbone more clear. Her neck was the place that the boy was invading at this moment. A bright red kiss mark had already appeared. The boy didn't seem to be satisfied with this and intended to go further. But when he was about to go further, the door of the equipment room was suddenly opened. This sound instantly alarmed the men and women who were immersed in the impact of hormones. He saw a skinny boy wearing glasses, wearing sportswear, holding a basket of badminton rackets, standing outside the door, not knowing what to do. Zhao Lu almost wanted to escape from here in an instant. He almost did it when he thought of it. "Stand!" But the boy suddenly shouted coldly at this time. Zhao Li's hands firmly grasped the handle of the basket. At this time, the girl hurriedly rushed out. Zhao Lu secretly glanced at her and recognized that this was a popular girl in the collateral branch. This boy was also one of the more famous and flamboyant students in the school. Although he was not in the same class as Zhao Lu, he had seen him before. "Four-eyed chicken, who asked you to come here?" At this time, the boy adjusted the zipper of his clothes and walked toward Zhao Lu with an unfriendly face. No, I was just packing up. I didn't mean to." Zhao Lu slightly averted his eyes. The boy sneered and suddenly rushed forward. He was the type with good athletic ability. He directly grabbed Zhao Li's collar with one hand and pulled his whole body in front of him. The boy was a whole head taller than the thin Zhao Lu. "I am very unhappy now, what do you say?" The boy sneered and raised his other hand. Without saying anything, his fist swung toward Zhao Li's cheek. Zhao Lu subconsciously shrank his body and closed his eyes at the same time, but this fist came later than expected. When Zhao Lu opened his eyes, he found that the boy's arm was directly grabbed by someone. It was a boy wearing the same sportswear as him. "Ming Ming." Zhao Lu opened his mouth and called out the name of the boy who saved him. "Chen Mingming." The boy frowned at this time. His arm was grabbed by Chen Mingming and pulled hard twice, but he still couldn't break free. "It's none of your business, get out of my way." Chen Mingming in front of him glanced at Zhao Lu and then said indifferently, "I am responsible for packing up with him. If he is injured, it will be more troublesome for me. I don't like trouble." While speaking, Chen Mingming grabbed the boy's arm and threw it casually. This force was not small. The boy only felt his arm being pulled like this, and almost dislocated. The boy glared hatefully at Chen Mingming. This guy not only had good grades, he was also good at sports, and he was also the main force of the school's mixed martial arts club. Although Chen Mingming's father was just a police officer, his mother was quite a famous lawyer, and she knew countless officials and rich people. The boy knew that with his little family background, he couldn't intimidate the other party, so at this time, he could only lower his voice and say, "You have guts. Today, I will give you face." While speaking, he directly pushed Zhao Lu away and snorted coldly, "Boy, be smart next time. If you ruin my business again, I will not let you stay here any longer." Seeing that the boy really left, Zhao Lu breathed a sigh of relief. He looked at Chen Mingming and said gratefully, "Thank you, if it weren't for you, I would definitely have been beaten up." Chen Mingming, however, squatted down and began to pick up the badminton rackets on the ground. "Pack up, otherwise you won't be able to make it in time for the next class." Zhao Lu also quickly squatted down and began to pick up the racket. He suddenly asked, "Right, Mingming, I heard that you are going to emigrate?" "Yes." Chen Mingming simply responded. After that, Zhao Lu didn't say anything else, nor did he ask anything more. Chen Mingming was a person who rarely talked to others in class. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was a bit of a loner, very difficult to get close to, and almost had no friends. Soon, the packing was almost done. At this time, Zhao Li's phone seemed to have rung. After taking it out and glancing at it, his expression became somewhat unnatural. "Mingming, I have something to do. Can you help me clear my leave?" Zhao Lu said, and without waiting for Chen Mingming's reply, he hurriedly left the sports equipment room. Chen Mingming looked at him in confusion, then continued to pack up the rest of the things, not paying any more attention. After arranging all the rackets neatly, Chen Mingming finally closed the door of the equipment room and left the gymnasium. After the PE class, when Chen Mingming and Zhao Lu were packing up together, there were not many students around when Chen Mingming changed his clothes and walked to the classroom for the next class. "Mingming." Suddenly, a voice made Chen Mingming's footsteps stop. He turned around and saw Gawain walking over with a leather bag. Gawain was not just Chen Mingming's teacher in school. Due to some of the more popular habits in the circle, he had also formally acknowledged Gawain as his teacher under Zhou Yuxing's influence. "Teacher," Chen Mingming greeted him respectfully. Gawain had always felt that this student of his was a little cold, but considering the environment in which he grew up, there was nothing he could do. To be honest, he was quite satisfied with this disciple of his. Smart, careful, calm, and observant. Although he lacked the vigor of his peers, he had the composure that was hard to find in his peers. "Let's go together? You should also be in this classroom, right?" Gawain said with a smile. Chen Mingming nodded and walked side by side with Gawain. After a few steps, Gawain slowly asked, "Did you see your father?" "Yesterday." Chen Mingming nodded. "Did he tell him?" Gawain frowned. Chen Mingming just nodded. Gawain sighed and said, "Are you really not going to reconsider? Actually, with your ability, you don't have to go abroad to have more room for development. I was already planning to recommend you to my teacher next year. He's an international authority. With him guiding you, your achievements won't be bad." Chen Mingming was silent for a moment before suddenly saying, "Teacher, why do you think people make a different choice?" Gawain opened his mouth, but in the end, he shook his head. Once a determined person made a decision, it was hard to change it. As someone who studied psychology, he naturally knew this very well. "The night before, your father came to my house and drank all night. He had a headache the whole time and only fell asleep after drinking some wine." Gawain suddenly patted Chen Mingming's shoulder. "It's hard for outsiders to judge family matters. If you have any difficulties, you can talk to me about it. Your father and I can be considered colleagues, and we've known each other for so many years. It's not good to see him like this." Chen Mingming stopped and looked at Gawain. He said indifferently, Teacher, I'm a student. I can be late. You're a teacher. It's not good to be late. There are still 3 minutes. If you don't walk faster, you'll really be late. Gawain shook his head helplessly. He took out a pen and a piece of paper from his bag and wrote something on it before handing it to Chen Mingming. It's the place where you and your mother emigrated. I happen to have an old friend. If you encounter any difficulties, you can look for him. He might be able to help you. Chen Mingming didn't refuse Gawain's kindness and accepted the note. The two separated at the corner. Gawain looked at Chen Mingming's receding figure and shook his head again. Then, he walked to the other side and headed for the classroom. At this time, Chen Mingming suddenly stopped and turned around to look at the corner. He looked for a while with an expressionless face. There was no one around. Suddenly, a faint silver light flashed on Chen Mingming's right palm. Gradually, a dull silver pistol appeared little by little. Chen Mingming slowly raised his left hand. In the palm of his left hand, a translucent bullet was slowly forming. The bullet was still translucent. Chen Mingming looked at the bullet. He knew that in order for it to be completely usable, it needed to be injected with a corresponding amount of life force. Without that, it would soon disappear. However, he could clearly feel the amount of life force needed to be injected. Unlike the previous 9-day bullet, this bullet only needed a few minutes to be injected. Sure enough, acquaintances need less time, Chen Mingming said in a low voice. He suddenly clenched his left hand and the translucent bullet disappeared. The silver pistol also disappeared little by little. Chen Mingming turned around and headed for the classroom. Due to meeting Chen Mingming on the way, Gawain was delayed for some time. He rarely entered the classroom the moment the bell rang. Usually, he would propose marriage for at least 5 minutes and prepare for the class. Sorry, students. I was a little late because of something. Gawain walked quickly to the podium. Let's start the class now. He deftly opened the teaching materials and slowly raised his head to look at the students in the lecture hall. Suddenly, Gawain's eyes twitched slightly. Gawain once again saw the boy by the window at the back. Loki's son. This was already the 3rd time. This was a gaze that was fixated on him. This reminded Gawain of Nietzsche's words. Chapter 1180. Heaviness. This was Gawain's intuition at this moment. The strange pressure that came out of nowhere made it difficult for him to maintain his usual calmness. As a result, he even opened another courseware by mistake. For students who often attended Gawain's classes, it was inconceivable that Gawain would make a mistake in class. Considering that teacher Gawain came to this class just as the bell rang, many students wondered if something had happened to Gawain. However, Gawain soon regained his composure and gradually resumed his usual lecturing standards. The atmosphere of the class also gradually became livelier. Only intentionally or unintentionally, Gawain's honest eyes would look at the last seat near the window. After much difficulty, the class was finally over. This was one of the few classes that Gawain felt was so long ever since he became a teacher. The moment the bell rang, Gawain made sure to come into contact with the boy who had come to his class for the 3rd time. Out of curiosity, when Luocio appeared for the first time and abruptly left after asking him a question, Gawain searched for Luocio's information in the teaching area. He couldn't find any information about Luocio, or rather, the University of Political Science and Law didn't even have such a student. After that, he appeared for the 2nd time. Today he appeared for the 3rd time. Every time he appeared, he was silent. During the class, he just watched quietly without asking any questions. His gaze was always fixed. Gawain took a light breath and walked down from the podium. Then, he stepped on the stairs of the classroom and walked toward the right rear window. He's still here and hasn't left. Gawain thought to himself. Teacher Gawain, I still don't understand the case you mentioned just now. Suddenly, when he passed by a seat, a girl stood up with a sweet smile and naturally blocked Gawain's view. Gawain's line of sight was helplessly blocked by this girl. However, His long-time self-cultivation prevented him from pushing people away. "Student, I'll answer your question later." It only took a few seconds. When Gawain's gaze passed the girl and looked at the last seat again, Gawain lost sight of Luocio again. He abruptly turned to look at the back door of the classroom, but he didn't see the back of the person. It was impossible for the person to disappear in just a few seconds. Even if he was running, it was impossible for such a big movement to be completely silent. "Teacher, what are you looking at?" the student asked curiously, following Gawain's gaze. Gawain opened his mouth. "Just now the boy sitting in that seat." "Teacher, did you see wrongly? There's no one here?" "Nothing?" The same answer as last time? It was as if only he could see it. Gawain took a deep breath and pinched the space between his eyebrows. "Maybe. I didn't sleep well last night. My vision is blurry." Could it be that he was really seeing an illusion? Gawain fell silent for a moment, but he had a strong feeling that he would still see those eyes in the next class. It was as if those eyes were always by his side. "I suddenly remembered something," Gawain quickly said. "If there's anything you don't understand, can you leave a message in my mailbox? I'll find time to answer your questions later." "Teacher Gao?" Gawain didn't say a word and hurriedly left the classroom. Lecturer Gawain was acting so abnormally. Something must have happened in his life. The students discussed in low voices. He walked into the washroom of the office building used by the tutors and professors. The teachers moved around a lot during class, so there was no one in the washroom at the moment. Gawain washed his face in front of the sink. He looked up. His face was wet, and the hair stuck together in front of his forehead cut his eyebrows into several lines. Gawain suddenly turned around. It was as if he could feel that peculiar gaze all the time. But there was nothing behind him. There was nothing in the mirror before he turned around. He was just sensitive to a degree beyond his imagination. Gawain sighed, leaned against the sink, and lowered his head. "Loki, I saw your child." He was silent for a long time. Suddenly, someone walked into the washroom and took the initiative to greet him. "Teacher. Teacher Gao?" Gawain turned around and saw an old man in his 50s or 60s. He was wearing a suit and leather shoes, but his expression was inexplicably haggard. "Professor Ouyang?" Speaking of this Professor Ouyang, he had a lot to do with the school's scandal a few months ago. This famous professor was exposed one day to have affairs with many female students. He even coerced and bribed several female students to do some immoral things by controlling their graduation theses, promotion opportunities, and so on. The school naturally couldn't tolerate this kind of thing. The matter couldn't be suppressed at all, and the school had already suspended Professor Ouyang from his position long ago. "Professor, how have you been recently?" Gawain greeted him amiably. Professor Ouyang smiled bitterly, walked in, and sighed. "Little Gao, you're the only one who still calls me professor when you see me. They all avoid me when they see me. I regret that I shouldn't have." It was obvious that this old professor was really regretful. His lifelong reputation was ruined, just like that. Gawain didn't have much to say to comfort him. "Professor, why did you come back today?" "The school hopes that I can resign voluntarily." Professor Ouyang looked bitter. "Consider it as leaving me with the last bit of face. I'm here today to go through the procedures." "Professor, do you have any plans in the future?" "I don't think too much about it for now. Maybe I'll go back to my hometown for a while." Professor Ouyang still couldn't hide the shame on his face. He looked at Gawain and said earnestly, "Little Gao, if there's a chance in the future, you don't mind such a terrible guy like me. Let's contact each other." "Of course." Gawain smiled. "No matter what, Professor, when you were still a forensic doctor in the bureau, your professional ability was still recognized. I won't forget how many cases you've helped us solve." Professor Ouyang suddenly smiled bitterly. "I may not be as good as you think. I'm old and muddle-headed. When I did things in the past, I was also muddle-headed. Now that I think about it, I'm really sorry for my previous job." Professor. Gawain frowned. Professor Ouyang shook his head. Let's not talk about it. Little Gao, please don't make any mistakes. Some mistakes can't be turned back once you make them. Okay, Professor. Gawain nodded and smiled. He wasn't a hothead who had just entered society. Professor Ouyang also knew that he couldn't teach Gawain anything. He was just talking about his personal pain as a way to vent. Professor Ouyang only came in to wash his hands. After a brief chat with Gawain, he left rather dejectedly. When Gawain came out of the bathroom again, he had returned to his calm, elegant, and graceful appearance as lecturer Gawain of the University of Political Science and Law. Zhao Li's house was rented in an old neighborhood. Most of the buildings in this type of neighborhood were more than 20 years old. They were about 6 or 7 stories high. There was no elevator to enter the house. Zhao Gao's house was on the 6th floor. He ran all the way up the stairs. When he reached the door of his house, he was already sweating profusely. Zhao Lu hurriedly took out the key to open the door and walked into the house. At this time, 2 men were sitting in the living room. Zhao Lu was suddenly startled. Little Lu, you're back. At this time, a woman in her 40s hurried to Zhao Li's side. These 2 are Officer Lin and Officer Wang. They're here to ask about something, but your sister's mood may not be too good. Zhao Li's expression became anxious when he heard this. After hurriedly glancing at the 2 officers sitting on the old sofa, he lowered his head and quickly walked into the bedroom inside. The middle-aged woman was also helpless at this time. She could only say, "Officers, please don't blame him. Little Lu is usually very polite, but when it comes to his sister's matters, Little Lu will be very nervous. I've already told you about Xiaoqin's matter. You see, it's okay, we understand." Officer Lin. Lin Feng looked at the woman rather helplessly at this time. This woman wasn't a member of this family. She was just a neighbor. She usually took pity on Zhang Xiaoqin and took some time out to take care of her. Then, if there's nothing else, I'll go home first. My family is coming back, I have to go back to cook. Seeing this woman's intention to leave and not get involved, Lin Feng quickly waved his hand and let this neighbor aunt leave. Lin Feng then sighed. Officer Lin, I didn't expect that Zhou Xiaoqin once tried to commit suicide. The companion next to him frowned at this time. We just mentioned Wang Liang's matter, but Zhang Xiaoqin's mood was very agitated. I think it's difficult for us to get any information in a short time. Let's wait and see. Now Zhang Xiaoqin's younger brother Zhao Lu is back. Maybe we can get some information. Lin Feng thought for a while and said. Officer Wang at this time curiously said, "Speaking of which, it's strange that they don't have the same surname." "There's nothing strange about that," Lin Feng said casually. "I heard the auntie say that the parents of this pair of siblings divorced when they were young and they each had their own surname. Then Zhao Lu came here from the county to study and lived with Zhang Xiaoqin." Saying this, Lin Feng stood up and walked to the door of the bedroom. Looking in, the door wasn't completely closed. In the room, there was a woman sitting in a wheelchair. At this moment, her face was pale and she covered her ears. She looked rather agitated, while Zhao Lu was saying something softly by the side. Seeing this, Zhao Lu walked over with a cold face and directly closed the door of the bedroom. Lin Feng had no choice but to sit back on the sofa. After nearly an hour, Zhao Lu came out of the bedroom with a gloomy face. Seeing this, Lin Feng immediately took out his ID card. "Zhao Lu, I'm sorry to disturb you. But we do come for investigation, and we mean no harm, please understand. We also apologize for scaring your sister." Zhao Lu frowned. "You? What are you doing in my house?" "It's like this. We wanted to investigate Wang Liang from your sister. However, when your sister heard Wang Liang's name, she became very agitated." "You see," Lin Feng thought. Zhao Lu snorted. "That bastard caused my sister to be like this, how can she not be agitated?" Lin Feng could only say, "Zhao Lu, regarding your sister, we're also sorry. But this investigation still has to continue. I hope you can cooperate with us so we won't disturb your sister." I don't know about that bastard. My sister doesn't know either. You can go, don't disturb us anymore, Zhao Lu said in a deep voice. My sister finally calmed down. I don't want her to fall ill again. Please understand. Wang Liang is dead, Lin Feng suddenly said. Zhao Lu was startled. Dead? Lin Feng nodded. I believe you've heard about the dismembered corpse case the day before yesterday? We have confirmed the identity of the deceased is Wang Liang. But we don't know much about Wang Liang, so we hope you can provide us with some clues. Good death. This kind of scum, good death. Zhao Lu sneered. This kind of scum, if you don't take him in, the heavens will. Sure enough, the heavens have a good cycle. Good death. Lin Feng frowned. Student Zhao Lu, we know you're a student of the politics and law department. I think this kind of talk is still a bit inappropriate for you. The law has long been rotten. Zhao Lu snorted. This scum, how many people have he harmed? But what about you? Saying there's not enough evidence, you didn't even set up a case, allowing him to live freely outside. Now that he's dead, you want to help him find his murderer? The law is the law. Lin Feng frowned. Zhao Lu, I hope you can calm down, and I also hope that these are just your words in a moment of anger. Otherwise, this is disrespectful to your studies. The law is the law, but the law should also be the lowest line of morality. Zhao Lu was agitated. If you can't even protect this bottom line, then what kind of law is it? You're not welcome here, leave. Leave. As Zhao Lu spoke, he opened the door and stared at the two like an angry lion. Officer Wang frowned. He was also a little angry. Or rather, his personality was a little fiery. Zhao Lu, I hope you can fulfill your responsibilities as a citizen and cooperate with us. What? You want to enforce the law violently? Sure. Come on. Let me see what kind of law you have. Zhao Lu said hatefully. I also want to learn the law, you can try it. You. Officer Wang's eyes widened. At this time, Lin Feng stretched out his hand and suppressed his colleague's anger. At the same time, he put on a smile and said, It seems that we came at a bad time today. How about this, I'll leave you a contact number. If you think of anything, you can contact me at any time. Lin Feng quickly wrote down his phone number and pulled his colleague out of the door. When he left, he stopped and said seriously, The law should indeed be the lowest line of morality, but this bottom line is not a dam, but a human wall. We are the human wall that guards this bottom line. As for your sister's matter, I'm sorry to disturb you. Lin Feng closed the door and didn't look at Zhao Li's expression. He had experienced a lot of similar things over the years, so he naturally knew the pain of some victims' family members who had nowhere to vent their resentment. Downstairs, Officer Wang thought that he was indeed a little agitated. Officer Lin, my bad temper is indeed a little. However, it's difficult for us to work with Zhao Li's uncooperative behavior. What else can we do? Can we take him back? Lin Feng shook his head. We're police, not gangsters. Now we can only wait and see if Zhao Lu can figure it out. As he said, a figure suddenly rushed out from the stairs. It was Zhao Lu. Wait a minute. The two turned around. Zhao Lu frowned and gritted his teeth. I'll cooperate with you. But find a place, not in my house. Chapter 1181. Although Zhao Lu requested not to do it at home, the place he chose was not too far away. It was next to the flower bed downstairs in the neighborhood, and it was a place where he could see his own balcony. The police only knew that Wang Liang had gotten a sum of money from Zhang Shaoqin, but because there was no evidence left, they couldn't file a case. They began to learn more about Wang Liang from Zhao Lu. Zhao Li's expression was complicated. Before the accident, my sister loved this man very much, and Wang Liang was a guy who knew how to please people. At first, I didn't like him, but later, he kept helping us and appeared at our house. Over time, I let down my guard against him. But I didn't expect that this scumbag not only had my sister, but also had several girlfriends outside. One of them even gave birth to his child, but they haven't registered their marriage yet. He cheated money from women? Lin Feng frowned. Zhao Lu nodded. It's not just my sister. As far as I know, the other women have also spent a lot of money on Wang Liang over the years. Actually, I've tried to persuade my sister several times, but she didn't listen. I had no choice, and I couldn't keep an eye on her all the time. My sister's life is more difficult, and it's probably because of this that she has some expectations for the so-called love of money. Shaking his head, Zhao Lu sighed. Later, Wang Liang's matter came out. Actually, it wasn't my sister who found out, but one of his women outside. In the end, she found all the women around Wang Liang, including my sister, one by one. In the end, they all realized that they had been cheated by Wang Liang. Then why did your sister do it? Zhao Lu clenched his fists, then loosened them. She couldn't get over it, so she went to look for Wang Liang several times. In the end, she was humiliated and came back crying. Her savings were gone, and so were her feelings. That night, I came back a little late. When I came back downstairs, I saw her on the ground. She had jumped off the building. She was saved later, but she probably won't be able to walk for the rest of her life. That's about her situation. Zhao Lu looked at Lin Feng. About Wang Liang, this is all I know. As for his personal information, such as where he lives and what he does for a living, I believe you can also find out, or have already found out. Lin Feng looked at his colleagues and frowned. I still have a few questions. Go ahead. Zhao Lu sighed. Lin Feng said, Do you know Wang Liang's other women? Their names, contact information, or addresses will do. I'm not sure. Zhao Lu shook his head. I think there's someone called Wu Rong. She was also the one who found out about Wang Liang and stirred things up. Lin Feng nodded and recorded the name. Then, he suddenly asked, Then, when did your sister commit suicide? Zhao Li's pupils contracted slightly. Lin Feng could only say, We just want to eliminate your sister's suspicions, if possible. Zhao Lu turned his face away. Last year, November 7th. Lin Feng nodded. According to the information he got from the landlord, Wang Liang should have gone missing after December. Then, he asked, Zhao Lu, what about you? What have you been doing all this time? What do you mean? Zhao Lu turned his head and looked a little emotional. Calm down. Lin Feng took a deep breath. We are not targeting you. We just have to ask these questions. Zhao Lu took a deep breath and slowly exhaled, as if he was trying to control his emotions. Yes. After my sister's accident, I have been taking care of her in the hospital and running between school and school. Zhao Lu said reluctantly, If you still think I'm suspicious, then go ahead. To be honest, I really want to kill this scumbag. Lin Feng frowned. At the same time, he suddenly waved his hand and signaled his colleagues to stop the camera temporarily. Since he entered Zhao Li's house and saw Zhang Shaoqin, the camera had been on. Seeing Lin Feng's action, Zhao Lu opened his mouth slightly but didn't say anything. Zhao Lu, regarding the clues you provided, I will sort them out when I get back and send them to you for you to take a look at. Lin Feng said seriously, I also hope that you can understand that a confession is a very serious thing, and not just words spoken in a moment of anger. I can pretend that I didn't hear what you just said, but I also hope that you won't say the same thing next time. Zhao Lu said, I cooperate with you not because I think I need to help Wang Liang find the murderer, but because I hope you won't continue to disturb my sister. My house is fine, I hope you won't come again. If there's nothing else, I'll go home to see my sister. Saying this, Zhao Lu stood up and prepared to leave. He suddenly turned his head, looked at Lin Feng, and then looked at the camera that was turned off. After hurriedly saying a word of thanks, he quickly left. Officer Lin, do you believe Zhao Li's words? His colleague suddenly asked. Lin Feng didn't answer directly, but said, Zhang Shaoqin committed suicide before Wang Liang's disappearance. She was hospitalized and couldn't walk, so basically we can eliminate the suspicion. Next, let's act separately. You go to find this woman called Wu Rong. I'll go to the hospital. His colleague frowned. Officer Lin, do you suspect Zhao Lu? We can't let go of any possibility because of sympathy and subjectivity. Lin Feng shook his head. Sympathy doesn't equal to understanding. Zhao Lu has enough motive to kill. And according to the current situation, he's probably the biggest suspect. His colleague pondered for a moment. If so, this kid's psychological quality is too terrifying. Since we saw him, he was full of anger and excitement, but not fear and panic. Don't underestimate the kids nowadays. Lin Feng shook his head, saying casually, many times the things kids do can make adults feel cold on the back. Go, a suspect is dead in the bureau, we don't have many people left. Anyway, I'll just have to work overtime. At night, at the Riverside Park, the children were playing. They were all young, around 7 or 8 years old. As for the adults, they were playing chess at the side. In front of the parterre, Chen Mingming was using a pencil to draw the city on the other side of the river. Wow! Big brother, you're so awesome! This was a little boy who came over curiously. The sketch on the notebook was exactly the same as the city on the other side of the river, which made the little boy feel incredible. Chen Mingming stopped, looking at the boy, smiling slightly. The little boy pointed at a figure sitting on a bench in the sketch, a figure from the back. Who is this person? There was only such a figure in the sketch, who seemed to be looking at something in the background. Besides that, there was no other figure in the sketch. Chen Mingming didn't answer, but just closed the notebook. He glanced at the little boy in front of him, suddenly saying, "Let me show you something." The little boy opened his eyes curiously, looking forward to it. Chen Mingming put his hand into the school bag, then looked at the little boy's eyes, pulling out a silver pistol from the school bag bit by bit. The cool appearance made the little boy think of the weapons of the heroes in some special TV dramas on TV. The texture of the weapons was far better than the plastic toys that cost dozens of yuan. The little boy instantly exclaimed, and his eyes became brighter. Chen Mingming waved his hand at this time, letting the little boy turn around. He put his hands around the little boy's body, then lifted the little boy's hands, slowly holding the silver pistol's handle, and then pointed at an old man who was walking his dog in front. This was probably an unprecedented stimulation for the little boy. The little boy tilted his head, narrowing his right eye, and made an aiming action. Chen Mingming whispered in the little boy's ear, "Do you want to shoot?" The little boy nodded excitedly. Because of the stimulation, his heart even beat faster. Chen Mingming let go of his hand at this time, letting the little boy hold the pistol with both hands and make an aiming posture. The little boy smiled, and his fingers passed through the trigger position at the same time. The weight of the pistol didn't match its metal texture, so he could hold it very steadily. The old man stopped, and the pet dog was squatting at his feet, accompanying him. The old man at this time looked at the beautiful scenery of the city, seemingly immersed in it. The spearhead moved little by little, from the old man's body to the old man's neck to the old man's head, and finally stopped. His finger pressed the trigger little by little, and time seemed to slow down. Chen Mingming silently watched the little boy's every move. At this time, "Son!" A rough voice instantly passed to the two's position, and at the same time, it stopped the little boy's action. It was a middle-aged man carrying a shopping bag who was watching the chess game. The little boy suddenly stuck out his tongue, turned around and stuck out his tongue at Chen Mingming, and then reluctantly returned the pistol to Chen Mingming. "Big brother, will you come tomorrow?" "I don't know." Chen Mingming smiled slightly. The little boy didn't ask anything more. His father urged him again and walked towards this side. The little boy had to quickly run back to his father. When he held the little boy's hand, his father glanced at Chen Mingming vigilantly and then walked away quickly and said quite sternly, "Kid, don't take other people's things." Obviously, the father saw the pistol, but he didn't think it was a real gun. The riverside soon returned to tranquility, and the old man who was enjoying the sunset slowly walked away with his pet. Not long after, the people playing chess also cleaned up the chessboard, and the people watching the game gradually dispersed. There were fewer and fewer people. Chen Mingming seemed to have integrated with the light from bright to dark, as if he was one with the surroundings. He walked to a long wooden bench in front of him and sat down. It was the place where the figure in the painting sat. He sat like this, watching the last bit of the sunset disappear into the horizon, leaving only the dark red clouds in the end. He suddenly took out the pistols magazine. There were no bullets. 10 minutes later, the street lights were turned on, and Chen Mingming carried his school bag and left here. It had to be said that the ability of women to talk, especially when one side seemed to have endless topics, that kind of afternoon tea time could only be easily passed. Why is this damn boy still not here? Nanny Ren finally got this opportunity, so naturally, she wouldn't let it go. After intercepting Yu Yi, Nanny Ren secretly sent a message to her son at the first time. He said that he wanted to go to the library to look for information today. Maybe he was too engrossed and forgot the time. Yu Yi said with a smile. Ren Xiling rolled her eyes. Reading books is more fun than having a girlfriend. No, it's not important. Yu Yi Luoqiu is usually like a piece of wood, but don't worry, such a man is good. Loyal. Miss Maid covered her mouth and chuckled. In an instant, it seemed that this noisy place returned to hundreds of years ago, like the courtyard of the noble palace. Nanny Ren looked at it and was somewhat fascinated. Why don't you sit down first? I'll go to buy something. Ren Xiling thought for a while. Anyway, I'm out, so I don't have to prepare dinner. You sit down first, I'll go to the counter to see what's delicious. Luoqiu will be here soon, so I won't starve him. Miss Maid naturally didn't intend to refuse Ren Xiling's care. Ren Xiling stretched her beautiful body and slowly walked into the shop. At this time, Miss Maid smiled slightly and was about to stand up, because the master appeared. But she didn't stand up because before this, Luoqiu had put his hand on her shoulder and whispered, "Just sit down." After that, Luoqiu pulled up the chair and sat down. Yu Yi began to make do with the flower tea ordered by Ren Xiling, and poured tea for Luoqiu. When I came out to buy something, I met Miss Ren, so I was delayed for a while. It doesn't matter, Luoqiu smiled and said. She likes you very much, and wants to see you more than once. But you've worked hard, she's very long-winded. Yu Yi whispered, Master, I'm talking about your affairs, how can I be long-winded? Luoqiu suddenly stood up, bent down, and kissed this pair of light lips, a light kiss. The eyelashes on her eyes were slightly fluttering, and there was a little trace of blue in her eyes. She naturally climbed on Luoqiu's neck. Their lips parted. Luoqiu whispered, These days I want to do something by myself. Don't think too much. Okay. Dong dong. Chapter 1182. Do you pay for the QR code scan? Yes. Ren Xiling took the 2 cups of coffee after scanning the phone. When she turned around, she saw what happened in front of the outdoor seats outside the glass door. The boy stood up and bent over to kiss the girl who sat quietly. Everything was as beautiful as art. Ren Xiling raised the 2 cups of coffee to block her eyes, and then secretly peeped out. Nanny Ren, who was secretly happy in her heart, also showed her true feelings on her face. She kept snickering. It was probably the sound of giggling. So he is enlightened. Nanny Ren nodded with a satisfied look. Then I won't bother you. She would do it when she thought about it. Nanny Ren gave the drinks she just bought to the clerk and asked her to send them out. Then she quietly left from the side door. After a while, the red minicar slowly drove out. Lizzie, are you at home? You're home. Shall I pick you up? I'm in a good mood today, so I'll treat you to a drink. Manuscript? What manuscript? I don't know. There's no such thing. It's impossible to work overtime. Miss Ren seems to have left. They seemed to disappear in this tea-house in an instant. Luoqiu and Yu Yi were no longer in people's sight, but they were still sitting here. Luoqiu smiled slightly and didn't speak. Miss Maid whispered, Master, are you going back to the shop? Luochu shook his head. Not now. Since I'm out, let's do something else. Yu Yi showed a puzzled look. How about watching a movie? Luochu chuckled. It seems that we haven't watched a proper movie. Movie? Luochu stood up and stretched out his hand to invite. Beautiful lady, can you do me the honor of a date tonight? Miss Maid put her palm on Luochu's palm without thinking and whispered, Of course. She smiled faintly, and her eyes were as bright as the stars. Little by little, dust-like particles suddenly drifted out from the servant girl's body. There wasn't much of it, and it quickly disappeared. Miss Maid looked at the changes in her body in surprise, but she soon understood what was going on. She frowned slightly and was even surprised. When Luochu said softly, Don't be so angry next time. You should know best. I won't get hurt. I'm sorry for making you worry, master. The servant girl looked a little upset. Yu Yi, it seems that you're not perfect enough. Luochu held her hand and walked towards the long street. When he sold you out, a trace of sadness was naturally rooted in your soul. When your predecessor was still around, your thoughts weren't free. This seed of sorrow has always been there, suppressed. The path I walk is different from my predecessors. Yu Yi looked at Luochu's cheek and was slightly moved. I like you staying by my side, but it shouldn't be just because I'm your master. Luochu said seriously, No matter how deeply you hide this trace of sadness and anger, I will pull it out and make it disappear. Master. Miss Maid's eyes flickered again. It was just that time had stopped. She suddenly stopped moving. This world, this space-time, everything had naturally come to a standstill. Luochu sighed and reached out to touch Miss Maid's face. He said indifferently, I don't intend to resign. It's enough. If you overdo it, I'll dislike you. What's the use of depriving me of my emotions so carefully? If you want to keep me, just make me happy. She moved. Miss Maid's time flowed again, but her dark blue eyes were chaotic, as if there were countless stars and everything. You remember? This was Yu Ye's voice, but it wasn't her. At the altar, Luochu could easily feel that another will was trying to communicate with him through Yu Ye's body, a face-to-face conversation that was different from the past. You're finally willing to see me. Luochu smiled slightly, and seemed to be quite satisfied with the result this time. If I didn't appear, you would have. Forget it, I'll satisfy you. Yu Yi glared at him fiercely and then said discouragingly, How much, do you remember? Not much, just some very fragmented things, and I can't piece them together. Luochu said indifferently, and some feelings. Sure enough. Yu Yi lowered her head slightly and soon, Luoya's attack on you last time still had an effect. The royal power penetrated into your body, and finally resonated with your power. Isn't this what you want to see more? Luochu said suddenly, I can vaguely feel it. Yu Yi shook her head, kept silent for a moment, and then said slowly, There is still a loophole in the agent of the origin, and the royal power is the last resort. But if the heir of the royal power becomes the agent at the same time, this loophole will be blocked, and the agent will be perfect. So I was born, right? No. You're just an accident. Yu Yi shook her head. I can't tell you too much about the details. Luochu narrowed his eyes. You represent the altar or the origin? Yu Yi also looked at Luochu and said seriously, I'm the altar and also the origin, but the origin is not me. Remember, the origin needs a perfect agent and I will help you. Why? Luochu frowned. Yu Yi walked to Luochu's side, and her head gently rested on Luochu's chest. At this moment, even as the boss, his time had stopped. Because no matter what you want to do, I'll make it happen for you. Yu Yi hugged for a while before slowly raising her head. Suddenly, she stood on her tiptoes and lightly pecked Luochu on the lips before slowly retreating. Yu Yi stared at him for a while before opening her arms slightly, and a cold presence slowly spread out from her body. Surface consciousness connection, disconnected, agent's growth rate has exceeded limit. Activating backup mechanism, sealing all royal memories of the agent. Adjusting growth rate, agent's servant, St. John's status has been upgraded to partner candidate. The surface consciousness has been reconnected. The fluctuation rate of the deep consciousness seal is 1.3%. Repairing. Repair complete. 62,400,090 true souls consumed this time. Surface consciousness embedding. Embedding successful. Deep consciousness hibernating. Surface consciousness hibernating. Activating self-running program. Yuyi looked at Luochio and slowly closed her eyes. The next time we meet, I'll definitely swallow it. So, this time, you can't be faster than me, okay? By then, I'll really let you. Luochio looked around instinctively. Master? Miss Maid's eyes were shining. Luochio could not help but apologize. I seem to have spoiled the mood. Sorry, I shouldn't have been distracted. Miss Maid smiled and shook her head. Something seems different. Luochio looked at Yu Yi and suddenly said. Miss Maid's mouth moved in confusion. Maybe it's because of Master's help. Yu Ye's mood has become more relaxed. Luochio nodded. This was the maid who would make him a pot of black tea in the afternoon and accompany him silently, making him feel extremely comfortable and comfortable. Come, the movie should be starting soon. Luochio smiled and said, I think you don't want to miss this movie. Just like the roar of the Declaration. At this time, the true dragon of China was lying on the sofa in her pajamas. She supported her head with her hands, and while eating sunflower seeds, she watched a boring TV series and complained. What the hell, chi into a horse? TSK. Different from Kelowna Shinryu, who had no manners, the little butterfly monster of the pet hospital was sitting aside like a well-behaved baby. She wasn't affected at all and was doing the test paper called Third-Year College Entrance Examination. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Kelowna Shinryu, who just wanted to stay at home for a few days, frowned. Dance, send them away. Okay. Luo Dance nodded and walked out quickly. Soon, the little butterfly monster trotted back. Kelowna Shinryu rolled his eyes when he saw the butterfly monster trotting back with her chest swaying. But the little butterfly monster said, Sister Long, 2 men in black suits came and said they wanted to give you this. What Luo Dance took out was a small red book with a stamp on it. From the administration? Long Shirua frowned. Although she didn't want to, she still sat up. Don't these guys have anything better to do? What else did they say? Luo Dance said, They said they came here to deal with a case. Sorry to disturb you, so they came to say hello. Deal with a case? Long Shirua pondered for a while. Generally speaking, this city was her private land. Though the administration existed, it was just an empty shell. There were only a few clerks who helped her to fulfill some of her requirement. For example, they helped some monsters to settle down, set up resident status, or arrange for little monsters to go to school and work. Kelowna Shinryu, who appeared in front of the 2 agents of the administration, was certainly not wearing pajamas. Although Kelowna Shinryu had a lot of clothes, most of them were bought by an old tortoise with a special hobby when he was a child. Long Shirua's original clothes were basically shirts, jeans and a white coat. I'm Lu Mingho, an intermediate agent. Nice to meet you, Consultant Long. I'm Wei Zidao, a junior agent. Nice to meet you, Consultant Long. Do you have nothing better to do? Long Shirua looked at the 2 agents who didn't even dare to raise their heads. Agent Lu Mingho then explained the purpose of his visit. Consultant, we received a special case application here, so we came to investigate. These are the application materials written by the local police chief himself, and these are the documents approved by the higher-ups. Please take a look. Long Shirua grabbed it and opened it. Died in the detention center? This attracted Long Shirua's attention, so she continued to read it. After a while, she put it down. Lu Mingho saw the opportunity and said, Consultant Long, we have checked the video of the incident. There was no post-processing. The criminal was shot out of thin air, and there were no bullets left in his body. It's impossible to do it by normal means. Okay. Long Shirua nodded, but she didn't pay too much attention to it. These things were extremely strange in the eyes of ordinary people, but when it came to transcendence, they could come up with dozens or hundreds of possibilities. What the surveillance video couldn't capture could be the effect of some kind of Dao technique, or some demons themselves had the ability to hide. Long Shirua was really not interested in these kinds of things. But there was one thing that surprised her. She looked at the two intermediate agents and frowned. I remember that you didn't make it public. Why did the police chief of this city write this application? Lu Mingho quickly said, It's like this, consultant. Since the Mount Tai incident, the superior passed a special case, and the encrypted documents were basically passed to the first and second leaders of the major cities or above, as well as the police chief. Special case? When did this happen? Long Shirua opened her mouth. Why didn't I know? Lu Mingho said nervously, This was decided by the superior, I don't know. Consultant, maybe you can ask. Long Shirua pondered for a moment, then waved her hand. Okay, go do what you need to do, and write a report for me later. The two quickly excused themselves. After that, Long Shirua picked up the phone, and a call was made to the distant capital. The person who answered the phone was Fire Cloud Evil God, who had just returned to the capital and hadn't had time to cultivate. Lord Long? Calling at this time, what's the matter? Fire Cloud Evil God, let me ask you, what's going on with the special case? Long Shirua said with slight anger, Are you going to bypass me for something? Lord Long, you must be joking. The special case is to better deal with the impact of the revival of spirit chi. Fire Cloud Evil God said slowly, Originally, I had planned to wait a few more days to gather more information and come to a conclusion before discussing it with you. However, since you've asked, I'll tell you something. What is it? On the second day of the press conference, we received a total of 3 special cases. Fire Cloud Evil God said seriously. 3 newborn babies appeared in 3 hospitals. These 3 babies each have unusual weak abilities. These 3 hospitals were not far away from the time when the disaster broke out. Moreover, we received 2 more reports of similar cases today. What do you mean? Long Shirua frowned subconsciously. Fire Cloud Evil God said solemnly, Perhaps an era of superpowers is about to appear. This is troublesome. Long Shirua muttered to herself. Chapter 1183. In the living room, the little butterfly monster was practicing her ventriloquism. Suddenly, she was startled by Long Shirua, who rushed out of the living room. It was supposed to be family, but because she was startled, the question mark M? For some reason, the pronunciation of Li became Li. K. I'm going to the capital. I don't know when I'll come back. You take care of this place. If Mo Xiaofei comes to find me, ask him to call me directly. Ah! Without further explanation or waiting for Luo Dance's reaction, Kelowna Shinryu rushed out again. Sister Long, didn't you say you wanted to eat turkey cheese noodles? I've already prepared it. Long Shirua was no longer in the pet hospital. After thinking for a while, she felt that it would be a waste if she didn't eat these noodles. Since she didn't like to eat them, the little butterfly monster put on her white canvas shoes and took some food, planning to feed the cat. After coming back for a few days, there were 2 more stray cats in the open space. I don't know if I'll meet the boss. The last time she fed the cats with the boss was a long time ago. After leaving the pet hospital, Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao went to the city's bureau chief, Lu, as fast as possible, who was Sir Ma's brother-in-law. Director Lu had written the application materials overnight, but he didn't expect that he would send someone over so soon. Only 3 people in the city knew about the encrypted red header document, and they only knew about it at the municipal level. People below the county level didn't know about it. When he saw the documents in Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao's hands, Bureau Chief Lu was really shocked. But he didn't ask much, but cooperated with the two's action, taking Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao to the detention center that night. Because there was a problem here. The suspects who were originally detained here and had not yet been convicted or interrogated were all arranged to be held in another place, leaving only the police officers on guard. Lu Mingho asked Bureau Chief Lu to get the police officers out of the detention room. Then, he started to check the crime scene with Wei Zidao. At this time, Wei Zidao put the suitcase he brought along on the ground, opened it, and took out a variety of conventional equipment of the agency. Lu Mingho, on the other hand, began to check around the cell with a device called the alien energy detector. However, the two of them did not find anything even after half an hour of searching. That's weird. The time of the crime should be around 11 a.m. yesterday. It's been less than 36 hours since then. Lu Mingho couldn't help but frown. According to past data, the weakest residual time of any demonic power or mana fluctuation is over 48 hours? There are no signs of destruction in the surroundings. Wei Zidao also began to analyze. Since the camera can't capture anything, it's more likely to be a spirit or a ghost. I've checked, and there's no trace of energy. Looks like we can't see anything here. Lu Mingho nodded. How about this? Let's go take a look at the corpse. Maybe we can find something. Wei Zidao nodded and quickly packed up the tools. After that, Lu Mingho found Bureau Chief Lu and asked to check the corpse. Bureau Chief Lu naturally agreed, and directly let Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao get on his private car, driving directly to the place where the corpse was placed. Bureau Chief Lu personally led them all the way, so there was no interrogation. Of course, this was also Lu Mingho's request. The most important rule of the agency was to avoid leakage as much as possible to avoid unnecessary influence. By the way, Bureau Chief Lu, about the deceased, how are you going to deal with it? Lu Mingho asked casually. Bureau Chief Lu wiped his forehead with a handkerchief and said seriously, "We can't announce that the prisoner was killed, but the prisoner has confessed to his crime. I think we can use his suicide as a reason. Of course, I'll keep all the related personnel confidential." That's good. The reason is sufficient. Lu Mingho didn't say anything directly, but simply nodded. Basically, if the local people couldn't solve it, the agency would have to deal with it themselves. Lu Mingbo didn't trust Bureau Chief Lu's words about keeping it a secret. There were too many people around, and there were bound to be some people who accidentally leak something. But the agency had a mature process for dealing with this part. Among the many Taoist weapons developed by the agency, there were good and cheap prop. Otherwise, the society wouldn't have been so peaceful for so many years. After all, there were many mysterious incidents every year. But on the way, there was one thing that made Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao secretly shocked. That was the heterogeneous energy detector. It could be said that it had been crazily outputting it, almost to the extent that it could detect the existence of demon power at every step. Sure enough, it was the private land of the Shinryu in Kelowna. There were too many demons hiding in this place. Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao sighed at the same time. There were only the two of them here, and it could be said that they were alone. A kind of difficult and dangerous feeling suddenly attacked their hearts. Soon, the two people from the agency, accompanied by Director Lu, came to the place where the corpse was placed. Before the two of them arrived, the corpse was sent to the autopsy place. "Director? Why are you here?" In the work area, Director Lu only saw a young man with messy hair, Xiao Bao. Xiao Bao looked at the two people brought by the director, and opened his mouth to say something, but was stopped by the director's eyes. After that, Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao directly walked inside. Xiao Bao subconsciously wanted to stop them, but was stopped by Director Lu. "Xiao Bao, they are here to deal with this matter. No matter what they do, just pretend you don't see or know. Come and talk with me for a while." Okay. Xiao Bao nodded. The two walked to the outside corridor, and Xiao Bao couldn't help yawning in front of Director Lu because he was too sleepy. Director Lu patted Xiao Bao's shoulder. "You've worked hard during the time when old Qin was not here. But don't worry, I've already applied for it. In fact, a new forensic doctor will come tomorrow to temporarily replace old Qin's work. It happens that there's a dismembered corpse case here, which is a big and urgent case. You have to assist the new forensic doctor well, understand? Xiao Bao was stunned and frowned. Director? What happened to Section Chief Qin? It's reasonable to ask for leave for such a long time, right? I called him, but I couldn't find him. Director Liu said, let alone you, even I don't know about this matter. Old Qin didn't do things like this before. It's been half a year and he seems to have disappeared. In fact, I've already asked someone to look for him, but there's no news yet. Could it be that the section chief met with an accident? Director Liu shook his head, indicating that he didn't know. Well, don't wait here. If there's nothing else, you can go back and have a good rest. Xiao Bao nodded, packed his things and ran back to the office. Director Li said that a new forensic doctor would come tomorrow. How could Xiao Bao dare to be careless? Speaking of which, Xiao Bao had been alone in the office these days when Section Chief Qin was not here. He was very free. If he had nothing to do at work, he would crazily slack off. The air conditioner, the internet expenses, and the canteen could handle 3 meals a day. It was simply wonderful. Well, this position needs to be adjusted. I can't let the new forensic doctor keep an eye on me. Xiao Bao pondered about the layout of the office. He should put the 2 offices together, so that 2 people could sit opposite each other when working. Hey, the new expansion pack is finally released? I've been waiting for so long. Previously, the game said that it was going to release a new version, but it had been suspended for several days. Only this game could do such a sky-high operation like shutting down the server for a few days because of an update, right? I haven't done an instance dungeon for a few days. I kind of miss Brother Xiao and Sister Ru. Without saying anything, Xiao Bao began to click on the option to download the update. Let them deal with the outside matters blindly. It was better to look at the content of the update first. Oh? Hero achievement? Dark Age? Demonic Land? An evil demon named Tai Yin invaded from another dimension, and the land has been demonized. Is this version the rhythm of a crusade against the Demon King? In the room, Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao were carefully examining the body of the deceased. They naturally did not have the expertise of forensic doctors, but they had a set of mature examination methods. The wound hasn't changed since it was formed. It's a one-time wound. There are no remnants of bullets. Perhaps it was some kind of method disguised as a bullet attack. But we still haven't found any remnants of foreign energy. Strange. Lu Mingho couldn't help but frown at this time. But just when the two were puzzled, the foreign energy detector suddenly reacted, but this reaction didn't come from the corpse, but from the refrigerator next to it. After being curious for a while, the two opened the refrigerator and found a container from the innermost part of the refrigerator. At this time, the detector's data began to rise a little. They saw that in the container there was a small, nail-sized sarcoma, slowly shrinking very slowly. About 1 minute or so, it moved slightly. But this kind of active reaction, as the container left the refrigerator and the temperature rose, seemed to gradually become stronger. When the temperature returned to normal, this sarcoma had a small area of squirming. What's this? Lu Mingho directly frowned, then looked at Wei Zidao and said, Go and ask. 98%. 99%. Seeing that the update was about to be completed, Xiao Bao blinked, and his hands were already on the keyboard, ready to enter his account and password at any time. Xiao Bao, come out for a moment. It was the voice of Bureau Chief Liu. Bureau Chief Liu was standing outside the door at this time. Just a little bit more, Xiao Bao secretly wailed, then put on a smiling face and hurriedly ran out. Bureau Chief, I'm here. What's the matter? At this time, the computer screen suddenly flashed, and the game directly jumped into the login interface after the update. At this time, another small interface popped out, covering the login interface of the game. It was a very small window. Do you want to feel the meaning of life? The small interface didn't exist for a long time. After about a minute, it slowly disappeared, leaving only the login interface of the game. Xiao Bao looked at the two men in black suits in front of him nervously. Before coming in, Bureau Chief Lu had told him that no matter what questions they asked him, he must answer truthfully, without any concealment. But Bureau Chief Lu didn't come in himself, but waited in the corridor outside. These two men in black suits, are they very important? At this time, Xiao Bao couldn't help but be curious about the background of these two men. Lu Mingho directly put the container on the table. This thing was found in the refrigerator inside. Let me ask you, do you know the origin of this thing? Xiao Bao was stunned, looking at the container, and was very scared, mainly because of the sarcoma inside, which gave him a creepy feeling. This thing was in my workplace? Xiao Bao swallowed his saliva, and turned the container with a pair of tweezers, turning one side of the label, and looking at it, there was a word, Qin, on it. What, do you know? Wei Zidao asked directly. Xiao Bao thought for a while. Oh, I remember. This is the sample of the culture done by Section Chief Qin. Yes, I remember. Tell me in detail, don't leave any details, Lu Mingho said in a low voice. Xiao Bao subconsciously shrank his neck and recalled, this thing should be left at the scene of a murder that happened around National Day last year. At that time, we found some strange liquid at the scene, and some fine tissue remains. I remember that section chief wanted to use it to culture to see what it was. But what? Lu Mingming hurriedly asked. Xiao Bao shook his head. But it's a little strange. The last murderer of that case appeared, but escaped. The arrest warrant is still here, and our section chief asked for leave after that, and hasn't come back yet. I didn't dare to touch this thing, so I simply put it in the innermost part of the refrigerator. If you didn't find it today, I would have forgotten about it. Xiao Bao frowned again. But I remember that when I put it in, it was only the size of an ant. I didn't see it move. Low temperature growth? Isn't this vitality too strong? What's so big about it? What the hell is this thing? Seeing Xiao Bao was lost in thought, Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao looked at each other for a day, and Wei Zidao said indifferently, Can you show us the details of the case? I can only find all the inspection materials at the scene of the crime at most. Xiao Bao shook his head. I don't have the other process of the case. Maybe you can ask the director for it. There's nothing for you to do, you can go back. Wei Zidao suddenly picked up the container and put it in the suitcase he brought. Wait, what are you doing? Xiao Bao was a little surprised. This thing can't be taken away casually. Lu Mingho didn't speak, and directly took out a small bottle from his pocket, unscrewed it, and took out a blue and white capsule. Then, under Xiao Bao's surprised gaze, he directly reached out and clasped Xiao Bao's chin, and put the capsule into Xiao Bao's mouth. What did you give me? Fragment. Xiao Bao suddenly felt a burst of dizziness, and then slowly fell down, but Wei Zidao quickly caught Xiao Bao and helped him to sit aside. This was one of the props that the administration used to deal with related personnel. As long as it was a capsule, it could basically make ordinary people forget what happened in a few hours. Chapter 1184. Don't care about the detention center? Why? At dawn, Sir Ma and Zhou Yuxing came to Director Lu's office and heard their boss's words. Ma Haoud suddenly became agitated. He pressed his hands on the desk, which made Director Lu's heart jump. He quickly wiped his sweat with a handkerchief and said, Because this matter has been handed over to someone else to investigate, and you and Zhou Yuxing should focus on the dismembered corpse case, which is what the public knows and concerns us. Ma Haoud frowned. Someone could ignore all the guards and commit murder in that place, which was a hidden danger. Of course, it didn't mean that the case outside was not important. We understand, Director Lu. We'll solve the dismembered corpse case as soon as possible. Zhou Yuxing saw that Ma Haoud still wanted to say something, so he hurriedly said and pulled Ma Haoud out of Director Lu's office. Sir Ma was unhappy. Zhou Yuxing, what do you mean? Someone from the top intervened. Director Lu asked us to come here at dawn, which means there's no room for negotiation. Zhou Yuxing frowned. We don't need to be stubborn with Director Liu here. We all know Director Liu's character. Didn't he take responsibility for your accident last time? Since he doesn't want us to investigate this time, I'm afraid he can't take responsibility anymore. Sir Ma didn't say anything, but smoked one cigarette after another. After smoking several cigarettes, he reluctantly returned to the special case team with Zhou Yuxing. While the detention center was at a loss, several suspects had been identified in the dismembered corpse case. One was Wu Rong, who caused Wang Liang to flirt with several women, and the other was Zhao Luo. Both of them had a big motive. One might hate because of love, and the other might want to avenge his sister. After investigation, it was found that Wu Rong often went in and out of Wang Liang's rented place when she was dating him. Therefore, it was highly possible that she had the key to Wang Liang's house and sneaked in to commit the crime. Moreover, Wu Rong didn't work in the city after the New Year and went to Xiangqing, which was worth investigating. After further investigation, it was found that Wu Rong bought a train ticket back to her hometown before the New Year. We tried to contact Wu Rong's relatives in her hometown, but Wu Rong didn't go back. Lin Feng sorted out the information from the investigation, but according to the records, Wu Rong had already boarded the train. Ma Hao nodded. Then, he discussed with Zhou Yuxing for a while and said, "How about this? Take someone with you and go to Wu Rong's hometown. Try your best to find her. I'll contact the local police station and ask them to cooperate. There's no time to lose, go now." Lin Feng stood at attention, saluted, and said loudly, "Yes." Gawain walked into the classroom with a heavy heart. He had arrived early that day and had even opened the door himself. Not to see every student enter the classroom, just to see every student entering. With the arrival of class, students came in one by one, greeted him, and sat down. Gawain didn't see what he wanted to see. He subconsciously looked at the time. Minute by minute, second by second, the bell for class finally rang. Gawain sat on the podium, silently looking at the students in the class. He did something he didn't usually do: roll call. Gawain's classes were usually open, with several classes of students, and they were usually full. Roll call was a waste of time, but he still did it today. The students were naturally very curious about Lecturer Gawain's abnormality today. It seemed that the senior lecturer was a little different these days. Chen Zihao, Wei Xinyue, Shi Jinmin, Luoqiu? He casually called out the name Luoqiu, but there was no response for a long time. Gawain carefully looked around. Some students also began to look around. They were unfamiliar with this name and guessed that it might be a student from another class. "Luoqiu? Are you here? Are you here?" Gawain confirmed again, and looked at the last seat by the window. Finally, Gawain closed the name list and said indifferently, "Okay, that's all for roll call. Let's start the class now." Fortunately, the roll call was only a few minutes, so it was still acceptable. The students quickly opened the textbooks in their hand. After Gawain sorted out his thoughts, he secretly shook his head, then turned around and began to write on the blackboard. His handwriting was beautiful, even if he used chalk. After he finished writing, Gawain slowly turned around holding the microphone. "Okay, today we'll talk about..." His eyes suddenly widened. His breathing seemed to stop at this moment, and his heartbeat inexplicably thumped. "He's in that seat. When did he come? Did he quietly enter from the back door when I was writing?" Gawain took a deep breath, but his words suddenly paused, because all the students' eyes were focused on him. He had no choice but to pick up where he left off and continue his lesson as if nothing had happened. However, his gaze never left that young man's body. Halfway through the class, Gawain suddenly gave the students a topic to discuss and asked them to discuss in groups. This was a very common teaching pattern. The students began to discuss on their own, because Lecturer Gawain's class was usually very relaxed. The students quickly gathered in twos and threes to discuss. Gawain casually walked around the lecture hall, as if he was listening to the students' discussion, But he only had one goal, and that was to get closer to the last seat. It was always there. It didn't suddenly disappear. Step by step, Gawaine's heartbeat echoed. Finally, Gawain reached his destination, the last step, and sat down. There was only Luaccio next to him. Only he and Luaccio sat in this row of 4 desks. There was a row in front of them, where the other students sat. Gon seriously looked at the young man who had been bothering him for a few days, since he suddenly appeared that day. Why didn't you discuss with the other students? Because I don't know them. I was taking attendance just now, why didn't you respond? Did you take attendance? Maybe I came a little late, I'm sorry. When I arrived, I only saw you reading. You said you don't know them? Why? Teacher, shouldn't you know that I'm not a student here? As he asked and answered, Gon became calmer and calmer. But his heart was not calm. This was not the mental state a student of his age should have. Almost instantly, Gon thought of one of his own students, Chen Mingming. But Chen Mingming's figure only flashed in his mind, because Luaccio's existence was so powerful. He seemed to be the person who was most familiar with you, the person who was closest to you, and the person who understood you the most. But this should not be the case. The most familiar stranger. This feeling surged in Gon's heart in an instant. He opened his mouth slightly, intending to ask something. Teacher Gon, your question is actually quite interesting. Luaccio suddenly smiled. This made Gon swallow the words he wanted to say. He subconsciously said, "Oh." The topic for the students' discussion was forgiveness. Content. In the court of Country M, a serial killer was being charged. The killer's methods were extremely cruel. The victims were all women. Before they were killed, they were all violated by the killer, and in the end, they were brutally killed. The women's family members gathered in the court. Everyone offered the most vicious curses for the killer's heinous crimes. Faced with the curses of the victims' families, the killer was calm and expressionless. Only the pastor-father of one of the victims said after the statement, "As a father, I can't forgive your crimes. But as a pastor, I can only represent myself and forgive you." The accused criminal burst into tears on the spot and broke down emotionally. What do you think is interesting? Gon naturally did not forget his question. But before that, tell me whether you think the killer should be forgiven. I can only represent myself and forgive him, Luaccio said slowly. Gon frowned. That's your answer? Luaccio shook his head slightly. That's the pastor's answer. Gon was silent for a moment. Then he asked again, I'm asking you. Luaccio said indifferently, don't the courts already have the concepts of forgiveness and non-forgiveness at the same time? And the pastors have the concepts of forgiveness and non-forgiveness at the same time. I'm not them. You're not going to answer? Gon frowned again. Luaccio looked at Gon. When their eyes met, Gon subconsciously adjusted his glasses. He heard Luaccio's words just now. If I'm not this pastor, and I'm not the victim's family member, on what basis can I not forgive this murderer? And on what basis can I forgive this murderer? We can assume that we're them. This is just for research purposes, Gon emphasized. Luaccio smiled and said, I just need to take a look. To me, it doesn't matter how many people I forgive or how many people I don't forgive. Gon opened his mouth as if he was thinking. He adjusted his glasses again and seemed to have fallen into some sort of trance. I've already said that this is a hypothesis. It's an academic study. You shouldn't avoid it. You might avoid it because you don't want to face such a choice. Indeed. Luaccio nodded at this moment. As long as there are emotions, no one would be willing to face such a choice. So, the best way is to not let such a choice happen to you. Gon frowned and said, but in reality we can't control the changes in nature, let alone prevent accidents from happening. So, you shouldn't avoid it. What you need to do is face it head-on. No. Luaccio looked at Gon and said indifferently, I can do it now. In an instant, Gon seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world, as well as a lie. He opened his mouth slightly. At this moment, the only thing that could be seen in Luocchio's eyes was an incredible confidence. "This choice won't happen to me," Luocchio said indifferently, "so I can only be a bystander. At the same time, I've lost the right to discuss this case." "Only this case?" Gon vaguely seemed to think of something, but he didn't really grasp it. He was silent for a long time and returned to the original question. "Then, why do you think this question is interesting? Isn't it interesting to have a case where contradictions exist at the same time?" Luocchio smiled and said, "As I said, in the same court, there's both forgiveness and non-forgiveness. The family didn't forgive the murderer, but after being sentenced by the law, they forgave him. The priest didn't forgive him as the father, but forgave him as a priest. If possible, I hope I can appear in this court as a spectator." "Human nature has always been complicated," Gon said faintly. Gawain said faintly. He subconsciously ignored Luoccio's last wish to appear in court. He lowered his head as if thinking of something. After a long time, Gon took a deep breath and looked up. He couldn't see Luocchio anymore. There was no trace of him on the table next to him. Logically speaking, at such a close distance, he should have noticed. Gon couldn't help but open his mouth in surprise. Teacher Gon, are you okay?" The students' voices gradually brought him back to reality. He found that many students were looking at him in confusion. Gon subconsciously asked, "What's wrong?" A female student stammered, "Teacher, you were talking to yourself just now." Gon was startled. He stood up abruptly and stared at the place beside him, where the young man had been sitting. "I was talking to myself? I was clearly." Gon subconsciously looked at the students in front of him. Their gazes were either astonished or frightened. This gave Gon a strange feeling of horror. Perhaps everything was just a figment of his imagination? Instantly, Gon broke out in a cold sweat. He didn't say anything and hurriedly walked out of the classroom. Under the puzzled gazes of the students, he didn't even take his handbag with him. "Hey, stop! Someone's coming. Let's go." It seems to be Teacher Gon. On the corridor leading to the rooftop of the teaching building, a student hurriedly ran over. "What's this guy doing here?" At this moment, 3 male students were surrounding a bespectacled student, Zhao Lu. Zhao Lu clutched his stomach in pain. His lips were still stained with the bitter saliva he spat out. It was obvious that he had been beaten up. But at the same time, the person who beat him did not choose to hit his face. Instead, he chose to hit somewhere that was not visible. "You're lucky. Four-eyed chicken, polish your glasses better in the future." This was the male student who had been seen in the sports equipment room. After a few jeers, the students left with cheerful smiles. Zhao Lu painfully clutched his stomach, and stood up little by little with the help of the wall. Chapter 1185. In the washroom of the teaching building, Zhao Lu stood alone in front of the mirror. His hair was wet and stuck to his face. At the same time, his lips were a little pale. This was the result of resisting the pain. He took a deep breath. His hands trembled at the same time as he slowly opened the hole in his shirt. The bruises on his chest and abdomen could be seen through the open clothes. Zhao Li's fingers scratched these bruises. Every time he touched them, he felt a burning pain. Dong! All of a sudden, Zhao Lu slammed his fist on the sink. Dong! Once again, he slowly pounded his fist on the sink, on the same spot. Dong 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 dong! He punched again and again, and at the same time, he raised his head and stared at himself in the mirror without blinking. At this time, he was silent, completely silent. This kind of punching lasted for several minutes before stopping. Zhao Li's knuckles were red, and his skin had been scratched. He took a deep breath and slowly buttoned his shirt. Then, his expression returned to normal, and he left this place. The next moment, one of the washroom's doors slowly opened, and it was Chen Mingming. Chen Mingming leaned on the door panel, looking at the position where Zhao Lu stood, seemingly thinking about something. He didn't mean to stay here, but simply wanted to find a quiet place to curiously study the characteristics of the strange pistol in his hand. After 3 experiments, Chen Mingming made a preliminary understanding of the gun's ability. First of all, the bullets it fired could ignore space and distance. However, it was still unclear how far the distance was. Perhaps he could find someone on the other side of the ocean to test it out. However, the suspect in the detention center had already proven that it could ignore space. After the suspect died, Chen Mingming naturally received information about the suspect's death through the silver pistol. Second, the difficulty. The easier the target was, the less difficult it would be, and the less life it would take to make the bullet, and vice versa. At the same time, once the bullet was made, as the person who paid with his life, he would have a feeling that something was taken away. Third, the condition to make the bullet. In addition to using life to make the bullet, it seemed that something else was needed. This wasn't from the person who sold him the pistol, but a vague feeling. Chen Mingming tried to enter that place again, but he didn't succeed. He felt that he might need to meet some conditions to be able to touch that magical place again. Let's do another experiment, Chen Mingming said to himself. After leaving the washroom, Chen Mingming saw Gawain standing alone in the corridor, leaning against the railing and looking into the distance. Gawain seemed to be thinking about something, and he was deep in thought. Chen Mingming's palm gradually lit up, and the pistol appeared again. A translucent bullet began to form in his other palm. He didn't choose to inject life, but he already knew the amount needed. But soon, Chen Mingming removed the pistol and the bullet. The consumption rate is the same as last time. Chen Mingming muttered to himself, the consumption rate is the same as last time. He chose to leave from another path and did not walk past Gawain. Not long after Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao left, they went to the local office of the administration. They were greeted by the few logistics clerks here, and then they settled down in the office's dormitory. Because there were no official agents stationed here, the facilities here were relatively simple, but it was suitable for people to live in. The two of them began to discuss the matter of this mission. Brother Hao, what do you think we should do about this mission? Wei Zidao lay on the bed, using his hands as a pillow. We've been to the crime scene and checked the body, but we couldn't find any clues. This method of crime is beyond the detection range of our tools. Could it be some high-level monster, or a cultivator with profound Taoist magic? Lu Mingho didn't say anything. He just took out the container that contained the strange sarcoma. He stuck a yellow talisman on the container. The yellow talisman constantly emitted cold air, simulating a low-temperature environment for the container. Lu Mingho was now observing the sarcoma's activity. Wei Zidao didn't look at it but continued to murmur, but since we couldn't find any traces at the crime scene, maybe it's some kind of curse? And the victim died simply, without any loss of blood essence, life, or soul. Can we rule out the possibility that this is a hunting crime? Then it's a vendetta? Alas, Brother Hao, can you say something? Lu Mingho said slowly. Usually, in this case, according to the previous practice, it's temporarily treated as an unsolved case. Unsolved case? What do you mean? Wei Zidao opened his mouth and sat up curiously. He was also a newcomer. He only had a limited number of missions, but after the Mount Tai incident, the staff of the administration became nervous, so he got the chance to go out on missions. Lu Mingho said indifferently, in addition to the problem of Taoist monsters, there are also some cultivators who walk in the secular world. Most of them walk in order to gain experience in the secular world. Among these people, there were also some who had the intention of upholding justice and slaying demons and devils. The more famous ones are the Celestial Master Taoism of Longhu Mountain, Maoshan sect, and so on. Then, they can't see some injustices in the world. Most of the time, they follow the ancient practice to eliminate all evils. If they encounter evil monsters, they just kill them so we can relax. But if it's a human, it's a different situation. Wei Zidao understood. Brother Hao, you mean? This victim may have been killed by a righteous man who walks in the Jianghu. He made a gesture of cutting his neck. Lu Mingho said, this guy committed rape and murder before, what do you think? Wei Zidao frowned, but this guy has confessed, so he may escape the death penalty, right? If so, there's no need to kill him, right? Lu Mingho shook his head. You don't understand the thoughts of those people. Many of them think that such a person doesn't deserve to live for one more day. Because according to the normal procedure, there is still a long period of time before the deceased is brought to trial and finally executed. Moreover, if his family continues to deal with the outside, they may be able to avoid the death penalty and change the sentence to life imprisonment. So, Wei Zidao sighed. Lu Mingho waved his hand and said, many of these cultivators who walk in the Jianghu act according to their own preferences, and they also have a set of standards for their own judgment. Moreover, they kill evil people. Most of the time, we can only turn a blind eye. You can't argue with them because of a person who deserves to die, right? Besides, I also want to kill such scum. But we are also public servants. There are some things that we can't really do. If we do it, we will be stepping on the line. Then, are you sure it's those chivalrous men who did it? Lu Mingho shook his head. It's hard for me to say, but this is Consultant Long's private land. Many similar things have happened in the past. For example, 2 years ago, there was a great demon named Sun Shaoxing here. He directly peeled off the skin of a drug addict who pushed his old mother down the stairs in order to rob money from his family and hung him up. The result was nothing. We can't really fight with the great demon for such a guy. Okay. Wei Zidao sighed. This time he looked helpless. Let's investigate for a few more days. If there is still no result, we will report it truthfully. There will be a special evaluation. Lu Mingho said casually, and then raised the utensil in his hand. What I am more concerned about now is what is in this thing. This thing looked strange and sinister. Go and apply for some detection equipment. I'll first do a general study of what this thing is. Okay. At night, under the bright lights, alcohol made people release more of their nature. In the back alley of a bar, a man's hands were caught at this time. Then a man with a thick golden chain was punching the man's abdomen. The man spat out blood. He was a little drunk, and his mind was not clear. At this time, he was beaten so hard that he spat out bitter water with blood. Good for you, Qian-er. You have money to pick up girls here, but you don't have money? You have guts, don't you? No. No, Brother Shao. Give me a chance, give me a chance. 3 days, just 3 days, I promise to pay you back. Qian-er begged, You can beat me to death, but I can't get the money. Wait for me for 3 days, I have money at home. I really have money. My boss has a pension. Trash. The man called Brother Shao beat him fiercely again. After Qian-er fell to the ground, he spat, Just 3 days, if you don't pay me back in 3 days, I will break your legs. Go. Brother Shao left with his companions. Qian-er fell to the ground, covering his stomach. He didn't even have the strength to stand up. He was still drunk, and at the same time very painful. F***ck, a smiling tiger, one day, I will kill you, who? He suddenly became frightened. He saw someone walking in front of him. He was afraid that Brother Shao would turn back. The alley was too dark. He fell on the ground and couldn't see clearly who it was. But the man suddenly squatted down with a bottle of liquor in his hand. Qian-er didn't have the strength to resist, but the man poured the liquor directly into his mouth. Qian-er could only drink it painfully. He was full of beer and was beaten up again. At this time, the liquor was poured into his mouth, which made him even more uncomfortable. After a while, Qian-er saw stars and saw double. Who did this to me? I will kill you. Do you want to kill the person who beat you just now? The man calmly asked slowly. Who? Kill who? Qian-er's head shook. He slowly crawled, leaned against the wall and sat up. Brother Xiao. It seemed to be a very young voice. Qian Er vomited painfully. His head leaned against the wall, shaking back and forth. Kill! 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 Kill this bastard! Ha 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 ha! Pick it up. Qian Er felt as if something was stuffed into his hand. It seemed to be a gun. He burped and slowly raised the thing in his hand. The young voice seemed to have magic, slowly saying in his ear, "If you have no money, he will still deal with you next time. Maybe he will beat you until you are disabled. Then, you may not be able to stand up for the rest of your life. People around you will laugh at you. It will be difficult for you to find a job again. Your family won't care about you. You will be ruined like this." Qian Er's eyes gradually became ferocious. A strong killing intent rushed to his head. Kill! 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 A bullet, at this moment, slowly formed in front of Qian Er. Bang! The pistol exploded. The bullet was shot out instantly and then disappeared. After that, Qian Er sat down and giggled. 6 days. The young man received such information in his brain, but at the same time, the 6 days were not deducted from his body. The young man quietly looked at Qian Er. At this moment, Qian Er held the pistol and fell down again. Not long after, he fell asleep and didn't know where he was. Miraculously, the silver pistol in Qian Er's arms disappeared little by little, and then appeared again in the hand of the young voice. It needs killing intent. The kid didn't have it before. I see. He calmly left the alley. At the front of the street, there was a car accident. A private car suddenly lost control and crashed into the fire hydrant on the street, which attracted a large number of onlookers. At this moment, 2 men in the car carried out a man with a big golden chain from the driver's seat in horror and shouted in panic, "Brother Xiao! Brother Xiao! Brother Xiao!" There was a small bloody hole in the forehead of the man called Brother Xiao. He couldn't open his eyes anymore. Chen Mingming slowly put on his headphones, and then walked slowly through the crowd. When it was almost 10 p.m., Sir Ma, who was planning to go home, and Zhou Yuxing, who didn't plan to go home, met in the corridor of the police station. Ma Haud was about to say something casually, but before he opened his mouth, he received a call from Lin Feng. Asking Zhou Yuxing to wait, Ma Haud answered Lin Feng's call, but within a few seconds, Ma Haud's face suddenly changed. What? What happened? Zhou Yuxing suddenly frowned. Sir Ma looked at Zhou Yuxing, stunned for a few seconds, and then said seriously, "Wu Rong is also dead? The body we just found is also dismembered, exactly the same as Wang Liang's." After making breakfast for his sister in the morning and watching her finish eating, Zhao Lu packed up and prepared to go to class. But not long after he went out, in the security booth at the entrance of the community, Zhao Lu was called by the security guard. "Xiao Lu, here's your express delivery." Express delivery? Zhao Lu was stunned. He didn't remember buying anything. "Yes, it was here early in the morning. I don't know who put it there, but it's written with your name." The security guard took out the package, which was about the size of a shoebox. "Thank you." Zhao Lu took it with a polite smile, and then carried it to the bus stop. While walking, he opened the package, tore the paper, and threw it into the dustbin. On the way, he opened the box. It was indeed a shoebox. Opening the box and looking at the thing inside, Zhao Li's pupils suddenly shrank. Chapter 1186. After receiving the call from Lin Feng, who was on a business trip, Officer Ma and Zhou Yuxing didn't have time to deal with it, because another murder case immediately disrupted their pace. The victim's name is Chang Xiao. He is the security director of a finance company, but he is actually a debt collector. The police officer who arrived first quickly reported, according to the people in the same line of work, Chang Xiao was driving at the time, but suddenly Chang Xiao's head tilted. Then the car lost control and crashed into the safety bolt. When they dragged Chang Xiao out, Chang Xiao was no longer breathing, and there was only a bloody hole on his forehead, suspected to be a gunshot wound. When he heard the gunshot wound, Ma Haud's hand couldn't help but tremble. Xian's gun control was very strict, and it was not like foreign countries that had the so-called qualification to hold a gun. If the criminal had a gun and killed people in the downtown area, what was the victim doing before the accident? Zhou Yuxing asked in a deep voice. They had already rushed to the scene. There were many onlookers at the scene, but they were all isolated outside the cordon. The police officer said, they were drinking in a bar not far behind. We asked, and the owner of the bar can testify. At the same time, we found traces of a fight in the back alley of the bar. The other two people in the car also confessed that they happened to encounter a debt collector, and after beating him up, they finally left. Ma Haud frowned. What about the debt collector who was beaten up? Oh, this person is called Qian Er. His identity has been verified. The police officer immediately replied, but when we found him, he was already dead, drunk and unconscious. There were also traces of beatings and bloodstains on his body. Our initial estimation is that he may have slight internal bleeding, which matches what the other two said. Ma Haud nodded, and then went to see the so-called Qian Er with the police officer. The two came to Qian Er and saw that Qian Er reeked of alcohol and didn't seem to wake up. Did you do the test? Yes, 292 per 100 milliliters, the police officer quickly said. Sir Ma's eyes widened and he shook his head. This guy doesn't care about his life. He's so drunk that he can't even stand up, let alone kill someone. Go, send him to the hospital. In fact, Qian Er was in the ambulance at the moment. Now that Sir Ma said that, the ambulance left first. At this moment, Zhou Yuxing walked over with an ugly expression. Old Ma, Chang Zhao's death, might be the same as the one in the detention center. What? Ma Haud's expression changed slightly. Zhou Yuxing said seriously, before the accident, Chang Zhao was driving. He must have been facing the windshield. But there are no traces of damage on the windshield. Unless the two people in the car are lying, it's too strange. Ma Haud scratched his head and looked around. There are no surveillance cameras around here. How about this? Let's take the people in the same car back and interrogate them. Let's see if we can get an autopsy report out tomorrow. Zhou Yuxing could only nod. Sir Ma then said, Zhou, how about this? This place is close to your house. Why don't you go back first, take a shower and have a rest? There are still many things to do tomorrow. I'm not tired. Zhou Yuxing shook his head. But I'm tired. Ma Haud patted Zhou Yuxing's back without hesitation. I won't feel at ease if I don't drag someone down with me. You old bastard. Zhou Yuxing couldn't help but laugh bitterly. You'd better go back first. Your wife has a second child, so it's right to take care of her. Anyway, someone needs to take care of this matter. I'm not tired, I'll do it. That's what you said. Ma Haud blinked. I didn't force you. All right, why are you talking so much nonsense? Zhou Yuxing replied impatiently. Sir Ma took out a cigarette box and gave one to Zhou Yuxing. He also lit one for himself. It seemed that he planned to drive home after smoking. He patted Zhou Yuxing's shoulder and suddenly asked curiously, Zhou, you seem to have changed over the past 2 or 3 years. Why are you working so hard? Zhou Yuxing said casually, We're the police. If we don't work hard, who will? Ma Haud was stunned and leaned against the car door. If you said this a few years ago, I wouldn't believe you at all. But in the past 2 or 3 years, you've almost become a workaholic. I can't help but believe it. I still remember when our 2 teams worked together on a case. At that time, Captain Luo was still there, and the second team was led by Captain Gao. At that time, you were the most slippery one. You came to work on time and got off work on time. You either made excuses or were careless about some things. Everyone said that you were just here to waste time. Zhou Yuxing lowered his head, not knowing what to think. After all, they were at the same level now. Ma Haud laughed awkwardly. Zhou, I'm just lamenting. I don't mean anything else. Zhou? Zhou Yuxing pressed his palm to his forehead and rubbed it hard. He looked like he was in pain. Sir Ma became concerned. I'm fine. Zhou Yuxing shook his head and took out a small bottle from his clothes. He poured out 2 pills and stuffed them into his mouth. Then, he took a bottle of water from the car and drank a few mouthfuls. What medicine did you take? Zhou Yuxing adjusted his breathing and seemed to feel better. Just some headache medicine. It's nothing. How can you not have a headache? Ma Hao said unhappily. Look at you. You stay up late every day and often don't sleep. I wouldn't be surprised if you suddenly died one day. No, no, no. How about this? You go back and rest. I'll take care of the rest. No need. Zhou Yuxing shook his head. Ma Hao's attitude became firm. Are you going or not? If you're not going, I'm going to call Chief Lu and ask him to give you an order. This. Zhou Yuxing rubbed his forehead. He really did have a terrible headache. He could only say helplessly, "All right, I'll go back first. Remember to see a doctor." Zhou Yuxing waved his hand, looking like he didn't hear him. Ma Hao was still worried. He called a colleague to drive Zhou Yuxing back. Captain Zhou, are you feeling better? Let me get you a glass of water. The colleague helped Zhou Yuxing down and onto the sofa in his house. No need. I can take care of myself. Zhou Yuxing leaned on the sofa and raised his head. He waved his hand and said, "There's a lot to do at the station. You go back first. I'll be fine after some rest. I'll go back later. You should organize Chang Zhao's information as soon as possible." But Captain Zhou, why don't you rest more? With the team watching, it shouldn't be a problem. Just do as I say. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Zhou Yuxing's tone suddenly became heavier. The colleague could only nod. After pouring a glass of hot water, he quickly left. He thought that Captain Zhou might be in a bad mood these few days. However, for the past few years, Captain Zhou had basically been in a bad mood. He would scold people at the slightest provocation. Although his ability to solve cases was top-notch, under high pressure, the people in the team were also suffering. Maybe it's a family problem. Everyone knew that Zhou Yuxing's family wasn't very good. Today, when he helped him back, the house was empty. It was obvious. At the same time, he shook his head and took one last look at Zhou Yuxing before closing the door. After the colleague left, Zhou Yuxing was in a daze. His forehead and neck slowly broke out in cold sweat. He only felt that his mouth was dry and his chest was tight. He wanted to drink water, but his hand trembled. The cup fell to the ground and shattered. The sound of the cup shattering was like a switch. It made Zhou Yuxing go crazy and scream a few times. He crazily swept the things on the table away, and even overturned the coffee table. He kept screaming at the empty house. The surroundings seemed to be split and stacked on top of each other. Zhou Yuxing opened his mouth in pain and slowly covered his ears with his hands. He knelt on the ground and finally curled up. He seemed to hear countless, repeated and loud sounds. Bang, 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 bang. This kind of sound. In the end, he fell to the ground. It was unknown whether he fell asleep from exhaustion or fainted. Subconsciously, Zhao Li's hands were weak. He almost couldn't hold the box in his hands. He took a deep breath and immediately closed the box. At the same time, he looked around nervously. The people on the road were rushing to work or school. No one was in the mood to notice Zhao Li's sudden loss of composure. He lowered his head and hugged the box. The direction he originally planned to go to the bus stop suddenly changed. He quickly walked to the nearest public toilet, walked into one of the cubicles, and closed the door. Zhao Li's eyes flickered. He quickly pushed his glasses and put his hands on the box, and froze. Suddenly, Zhao Li took a deep breath and directly opened the box. The silver pistol seemed to be heavy. He could even feel the weight on his leg. Zhao Li took another deep breath and picked up the pistol. It still felt heavy. This was obviously a metal product, not a simple plastic toy. Under the silver pistol, there was a small paper card. Zhao Li quickly picked it up and opened it. Hold the gun, think of the person you want to kill, and the bullet will appear. You can kill people regardless of the distance. Then there were 2 sentences of explanation, nothing more. Zhao Lu was silent for a moment, putting the pistol and the paper back into the box. He pondered for a while before taking out his mobile phone. Social media app, blank profile picture. There was no message record. Zhao Lu quickly typed a line of words at this time. The gun, did you send it? After sending the message, Zhao Lu stared at the screen without blinking, silently counting the time. About a minute later, the screen showed a reply. No. After Zhao Lu saw the reply, he quickly typed a new message. I received a pistol today, but there were no bullets. Do you know who sent it? But after waiting for a long time, there was no reply this time. Zhao Lu gritted his teeth and typed again. The police came to find me. This time, there was still no reply. 3 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. There was still no reply. Zhao Li's eyes flashed with a trace of ferocity. Finally, he closed his eyes. After a while, it returned to normal. He cleared the message record and the screen became blank again. Zhao Lu thought for a while and finally put the pistol and the small paper into his school bag, leaving the box behind. Then, he lowered his head and left here. Fortunately, there was no class in the first period. So, even if Zhao Lu was delayed for a long time, he was not late. His family's financial situation was not too good, but because of his good grades and excellent studies, he quickly qualified for the scholarship. Therefore, he would most likely not let himself make mistakes in school. Big classroom, public class. The teacher for today's class was Lecturer Gawain. This teacher's course was also one of the compulsory courses for Zhao Lu. He needed the course credits for this course. Of course, there were only 3 classes a week, so it was not a lot. But for Lecturer Gawain's class, those who were late would not be able to get a seat in front. Zhao Lu was not late, but he arrived at the right time. For this reason, he could only go straight to the seat in the back. Just as he entered the classroom through the back door, Zhao Lu saw a few malicious gazes. They were the students who had held him down and beaten him up in the upper floor yesterday. When the leader saw Zhao Lu enter through the back door, he narrowed his eyes and smiled. Then, he suddenly stood up. Zhao Lu lowered his head and quickly changed his direction. He hurriedly looked around. Suddenly, as though he had seen his savior, he quickly sat down. His seat was beside Chen Mingming. When the boys saw this, they gestured at Zhao Lu and then sat down with a sneer. The bell for class was about to ring. When Gawain came in, they would not be able to cause trouble. Although he was only a lecturer in the school, they did not know that Lecturer Gawain's father-in-law was in the upper echelon of the system and had hopes of being promoted to the province next year. These students' families had some assets and connections, but even their parents did not dare to offend them, let alone themselves. Ming, I'll leave after class. I won't implicate you. Zhao Lu shrunk his neck and whispered to Chen Mingming. Chen Mingming glanced at him indifferently and then said, Let's start the class first. Lecturer Gawain slowly walked into the classroom from the front door. Because it was a different class, the students did not see Gawain's gaffe yesterday. Although some students would talk about it on the school forum, it did not have much of an impact. Gawain looked around at the students and finally saw Chen Mingming sitting at the back. He nodded slightly and said, Okay, students, let's start the class. Before turning on the projector, Gawain quietly turned on the camera on his phone and placed it on the podium. Then, he entered the classroom with a straight face and continued his lecture. Even when he saw Luochio's figure suddenly appear in the empty seat midway, Gawain did not feel anything out of the ordinary. Sure enough, he still appeared. This was still a lecture that was up to standard. Just like the previous few times, when the bell rang, Gawain could not see Luochio again, and no student could find out anything. Gawain stayed after class as usual and waited for some students to come forward to ask questions. When it was almost time for the next class, he packed up and left, returning to his office. Everything was as usual. On the way back, Gawain did not turn on his phone. Only when he returned to his office did he connect his phone to the computer and open the video. he recorded during class. From the first second to the last second, Gawain did not fast forward for a single second. Chapter 1187. As usual, Miss Maid came to the boss' study room with cleaning tools and pushed the door open. In fact, with the club's strangeness, it was impossible for it to be contaminated with dust. Perhaps it would not be covered with a thin layer of dust until the end of time. She was just used to doing certain things. But today, Luocio was in the study room. Miss Maid did not notice her master's arrival. This situation could only be said to be intentional by her master. Luocio, who was sitting on the chair, leaned back naturally, letting the chair bear his weight and bend back automatically. He closed his eyes as if he was asleep, but also as if he was thinking about something. The door had already made a sound, which Miss Maid couldn't control because she didn't know that her master was already in the study room. "I'm just thinking about something. I don't want to be noisy." Luocio slowly opened his eyes and smiled slightly. "Every time I come back, there will be a bigger commotion. This place is not as quiet as before." Except for Teinzi, who was stuffed into the mainframe, Taisetsu and Nero lived here today. Even Luoya, who rarely came out of her room, was here. If the atom used to support the Master God project was included, it was indeed different from the previous shop with only maids and the boss. "I'll make tea for Master." "No need." Luocio waved his hand. "I bought some soy milk on the way here. It's been many years. I used to drink it when I passed by when I was in school. The auntie should have sold it for more than 10 years. The taste hasn't changed for so many years. It's not easy. Come and try it." On the desk, the packed soy milk slowly appeared. She didn't know when he bought it, but the boss bought it back, so it was still warm. Miss Maid walked slowly to Luocio's side. When she approached, she found that there were still 2 bullets standing on the desk in front of her master. She didn't drink the soy milk. Instead, she went behind Luocio and gently touched Luocio's hair with both hands. She touched his scalp and rubbed. No matter when, this kind of massage could always make people feel comfortable. 2 bullets. Yu Yi said softly, "Master, are you thinking about Qin Mingming?" "Partly," Luocio said. While enjoying the massage, his eyes fell on the 2 bullets standing on the table. He gave the gun away. "Master, are you going to continue observing Qin Mingming like before?" Miss Maid suddenly asked. "Not necessarily," Luocio answered casually. Then he closed his eyes and leaned back a little, as if he intended to enjoy the maid's massage wholeheartedly. However, at this moment, Boss Luo suddenly opened his palm, and a cloud of black gas slowly emerged from his palm. Instantly, Miss Maid's movements stopped. She could feel that this trace of black gas contained an evil will. But Luocio gently clenched his hand, and that trace of black gas was easily dispersed in his palm. Luocio said indifferently, "I encountered some troublesome things 2 days ago. Something seems to want to jump out again." As long as he didn't become like the previous one, the master was bound to have negative emotions. Miss Maid was very clear about this. Although she had only served the club for less than 300 years, she had existed with another identity before that. The previous one had destroyed several masters, which was caused by this kind of negative emotions. So, she was not surprised that Luocio had this kind of situation now. "Master, you can kill the negative emotions at will?" This was the reason why Miss Maid was surprised. Even she was quietly affected by the negative emotions earlier, so she somewhat reacted. If Luocio hadn't acted in time, she was afraid that some troubles would have been caused. "Actually, it has happened once before," Luocio said indifferently. "It caused a big commotion last time. But at that time, I also wanted to see how far it could jump. Later, I felt that it was boring, so I scattered it casually. This time, it is much weaker than last time. This proves that the negative emotions can't affect you much." Miss Maid smiled with relief. Luocio looked at his palm and suddenly said, "The new game DLC has been updated, right?" "Yes." "I don't plan to go out today." Luocio stood up and held Miss Maid's hand. "Let's go, Accompany me for a walk inside. The master seemed to be in a good mood. Of course, she was also in a good mood since she came back from the date that night. By the way, take Loya with you. She may be more adapted to the world in the game. Then, I will go and create an account for Loya first. In the new DLC of Project God, in the depths of the demonic continent, Teinzi, who was dancing with a group of skeletons, suddenly sneezed in a huge ancient castle surrounded by thunder. What the F***CK? Who is talking bad about me? Mobile phone. I have completed the withdrawal procedures. You don't have to go to school these few days. Have a good rest at home for a while. Mom has something to do tonight. Find yourself something to eat. Okay. A notification of a transfer appeared on the screen. The transfer explanation was, money for food. Chen Mingming didn't accept it. He just put the mobile phone on the table casually. After that, he didn't pay attention to it anymore but continued to read the book in his hand. This was a book borrowed from the library. He didn't finish it at first. He planned to finish it in the next few days. There was no one else in the classroom except him. Suddenly, a noise came from outside the window, disturbing the silence here. Chen Mingming closed the book, walked to the window, pulled open the curtains, and looked outside. It was the passage downstairs. Several boys were running crazily in front at this time, laughing loudly. One of the boys was holding a pair of pants in his hand and kept waving it. The students on both sides of the road laughed loudly. Because behind him, there was a boy wearing only underwear, chasing after him in grief and indignation. Zhao Lu. Give it back to me. Give it back to me. Here you go. The boy holding the pants sneered at this time and threw the pants directly. However, he didn't throw it to Zhao Lu, but to a tree nearby. The pants were instantly caught by the branches and couldn't move. Zhao Lu seemed to want to rush forward, but looking at the pants hanging on the tree, he hesitated. As for the boys, after a few mocking words, they flashed into the crowd. Zhao Lu looked at the surrounding students and suddenly felt that the world was spinning. He could only try to pull his clothes as much as possible, trying to cover it up. However, the crowd didn't disperse. There were more looks of ridicule than pity, and there were more hands that raised the phone screen than those that reached out to help. Chen Mingming's face and ears were red. He suddenly felt that the world was like a huge whirlpool that was squeezing him and distorting everything. I wonder how he will get through this predicament. Chen Mingming didn't look at it. He just quietly returned to his original position, put on his earphones, and opened the book that he hadn't finished reading. He read carefully word by word. Captain Zhou. Hello, Captain Zhou. Along the way, Zhou Yuxing responded to the colleagues who greeted him. At the same time, he quickly walked back to the special case team's meeting place. It was almost time for dinner. After he was sent home by his colleagues last night, he lost control of his emotions. In the end, he didn't even know if he fainted or fell asleep because he was too tired. This sleep was very long, so long that it made him think of many things repeatedly. It was the afternoon of the next day. He slowly woke up. After waking up, Zhou Yuxing didn't have time to tidy up his things at home and hurried back to the police station. Perhaps it was because he had a good rest. Zhou Yuxing's face looked better. Old Zhou, it seems that you had a good rest this time. Seeing Zhou Yuxing walk in hurriedly, Sir Ma, who had a pair of rabbit-like eyes, greeted him casually. How is it? Zhou Yuxing sat down and asked directly. Just in time, Lin Feng just came back. You can also listen to what he has to say. Ma Hao pointed to a back that was preparing the projection and said. At this time, Lin Feng made an okay gesture, then asked someone to dim the lights and turn on the projector. Suddenly, several sets of photos appeared on the screen. Lin Feng said seriously, according to Ma Hao's order, another colleague and I rushed to Wu Rong's hometown. With the help of the local police, we quickly found Wu Rong's rented house. This is the freezer we found in her house. The photos were very clear, so the things in the freezer could be clearly seen. Lin Feng took a deep breath and said, the deceased was Wu Rong. After death, her body was decomposed with a sharp weapon, but the degree of decomposition was not as serious as Wang Liang's. Only the head, limbs, and body were separated into 13 pieces. After piecing them together, there was nothing missing. The murderer probably didn't have time to deal with it, or didn't have time to do more decomposition. How did you find it? Zhou Yuxing frowned and asked. Lin Feng said, It's similar to the situation when we found Wang Liang's body. It should be a short circuit caused by the power outage a few days ago. However, it wasn't the freezer that short-circuited, but the wires in the house she rented. I've checked that place. It's a village in the city, and the wires are everywhere, so it's easy to short-circuit. When we found the house, we smelled a stench. After opening the door, we found the freezer. Because it was placed in the middle of the house, it was easy to see. Have you asked the landlord? Ma Haod asked with his thumb. Yes, he did. Lin Feng quickly replied, but the situation is basically the same as Wang Liang's landlord. After signing the rental contract, the landlord usually transferred money via mobile phone and didn't meet directly. In addition, we also investigated Wu Rong's relatives and some friends. We found that during this period, Wu Rong always updated her status on her WeChat moments. The last time was 7 days ago. Ma Haod and Zhou Yuxing looked at each other. Zhou Yuxing said, The last time Wang Liang updated his status was also 7 days ago. From the way the crime was committed, it's very likely that the murderer is the same person. Ma Haod nodded and then looked at Lin Feng. Have you checked Wu Rong's interpersonal relationships? Lin Feng said, Yes, Wu Rong's character isn't good. She has a bad temper, and even doesn't have much contact with her family. She also left after resigning from the city. I went to her workplace before I came back, and found out that she didn't really offend anyone. However, her colleagues don't like her, so she is usually alone most of the time. First it was Wang Liang, then it was Wu Rong. Sima rubbed his red eyes, and his head was a mess. Zhou Yuxing knocked on the table with a pen. The meeting room suddenly fell into a silent atmosphere. After a while, Zhou Yuxing slowly asked, What about Zhao Lu? How's the investigation on him? Another colleague stood up. Because Lin Feng was temporarily on a business trip, he was handed over to him to conduct the follow-up investigation after the questioning. We've learned that Zhao Lu came to the hospital almost every day when Zhang Xiaoqin was hospitalized. Sometimes he even stayed overnight with her. He didn't come several times because he had exams and needed to review. But he didn't miss any exams. After Zhang Xiaoqin was discharged, Zhao Lu also stayed at home every day. The neighbors can testify. Oh, Officer Lin also asked me to check Zhao Li's travel record. Since Zhang Xiaoqin's accident, Zhao Lu has no record of leaving the city. Ma Haod sighed. Let's assume that the murderer is the same person, and let's boldly assume that Zhao Lu is the murderer. But Wu Rong's hometown is at least 4 hours away from the city by high-speed rail. Although the plane is fast, it's impossible not to leave any records. Besides, it'll take at least 1 day to go back and forth. But this guy has no record of going out. If he took a pheasant car, it'll take at least 3 days to go back and forth. That is to say, the assumption doesn't hold water? In fact, the inspection report also mentioned that there were no useful traces at the scene of the murder, not even fingerprints. Obviously, the murderer handled it carefully. The investigation seemed to have reached a dead end. Go and investigate the other women who are related to Wang Liang. Zhou Yuxing sighed. These women were also cheated of their money and feelings, and the friction between them was caused by Wu Rong's provocation. This motive is quite simple. Got it, Captain Zhou. Lin Feng nodded. Zhou Yuxing said, Try to urge the police over there to provide a detailed inspection report. Also, I saw a few photos on Wang Liang and Wu Rong's Weibo. Check them and see where they were taken. The murderer knows how to use their photos to fake news that they are still alive. He must be a very well-planned person. If it wasn't for the power outage, Who knows when we would have found the bodies? But the time has been delayed for so long. Many clues may have been lost, and the murderer had enough time to destroy most of the evidence. But justice has a long arm. I believe that there will be a flaw. Everyone, work hard. Let's adjourn for now. Go back to work. Everyone, work hard. This was Zhou Yuxing's mantra to make people work overtime. After everyone had left, Zhou Yuxing looked at Ma Haud and said, "Old Ma, you can go back and rest." "Okay, I can't take it anymore." Sir Ma nodded. But at this moment, Xiao Bao hurried over with a document in his hand. He placed it in front of Sir Ma and Zhou Yuxing. "Captain Ma, Captain Zhou, I have bad news for you. What's this?" "This is Chang Zhao's preliminary autopsy report," Xiao Bao said seriously. Chang Zhao's death was the same as the suspect's death in the detention center. They were both shot, but no bullets were found. "What?" Zhou Yuxing suddenly stood up. Ma Haud lowered his head, rubbed his forehead and wailed, "I want to go home." When they reached home, Zhao Lu took a deep breath, and a smile appeared on his silent face. He opened the door, lifted the bag in his hand, and said happily, "Sis, I'm back. The supermarket had a discount today, so I bought your favorite pork shoulder. Let's eat braised pork shoulder tonight." Zhang Xiaoqin's door was closed. Chapter 1188. Zhao Lu had learned to cook at home since he was very young. After so many years, his cooking skills were actually quite good. He knew his sister Zhang Xiaoqin's taste. It didn't take long to cook a meal. Naturally, he didn't need to cook too much for two people. 2 dizzy dishes and 1 vegetarian dish. Zhao Lu watched with satisfaction. Then, he took off his apron, walked to Zhang Xiaoqin's room, and pushed her out. A few months ago, Zhang Xiaoqin had failed to commit suicide. However, her legs were badly fractured, and she had been recovering for a long time. The doctor said that if she continued to do rehabilitation exercises, she still had a chance to stand up. However, ever since Zhang Xiaoqin was discharged from the hospital, she hadn't gone to the hospital to do rehabilitation exercises. When she returned home, Zhao Lu had been taking care of her. When he went to class, the kind neighbor took care of her. However, ever since she had committed suicide, Zhang Xiaoqin had barely spoken a word. Over the past few days, it was only when Lin Feng had come to visit and mentioned Wang Liang that Zhang Xiaoqin had become agitated and shouted at him to leave. "Sister, try it." Zhao Lu put a dish in Zhang Xiaoqin's bowl. He smiled and looked at Zhang Xiaoqin, waiting for her to pick up her chopstick. However, Zhang Xiaoqin didn't move. Zhao Li's smile froze. He asked carefully, "Sister, don't you want to eat this? There's something else in the fridge. I'll make it for you." With that, he quickly stood up and walked to the kitchen. "Little Lu, I'm not hungry." "Sister, did you talk?" Zhao Lu was stunned. He suddenly turned around and walked quickly to Zhang Xiaoqin's side. He squatted down and grabbed his sister's hand. He smiled and smiled. "How nice." Zhang Xiaoqin's face was slightly pale and her cheeks were thin. She didn't look as good as before. She looked at Zhao Lu and said softly, "Auntie brought me some food in the afternoon. I'm not hungry yet." Sister, you really talk. That's great. That's great." Looking at the face that had been by her side since she was young, Zhang Xiaoqin smiled. She reached out and stroked Zhao Li's cheek. "Find a time to take me to rehabilitation. I can't sit all the time." Okay. I'll go tomorrow, I'll go now." Zhao Lu stood up immediately. "Are you stupid? Look at the situation now. I'm happy." Zhao Lu was so happy that he got carried away. He grabbed the handle of the wheelchair and pushed Zhang Xiaoqin as if he had gone crazy. "Hey, stop spinning, I'm dizzy." "Are you dizzy? A little dizzier?" "Alright, stop messing around. I'm really dizzy. You child." It seemed that it had been a long time since the two of them laughed so loudly. If only time could slow down. After the siblings played around for a while, Zhao Lu fetched a basin of hot water and began to wash Zhang Xiaoqin's feet. Zhao Lu had heard that if one applied heat regularly, it could dredge the meridians. These days, Zhao Lu had not stopped massaging her legs every day. "Sis, why did you suddenly?" After wiping the water stains on his calves and covering them with a blanket, Zhao Lu sat next to Zhang Xiaoqin, hesitating as if he was afraid of something. Only then did Zhang Xiaoqin reveal the reason. "A few days ago, 2 police officers came. Actually, I found out about that person's death." Zhao Lu silently grabbed Zhang Xiaoqin's hand. Zhang Xiaoqin sighed softly. "I'm really stupid. I'm already so old, yet I still can't see past it and still want to seek death. Xiao Lu, thank you for always taking care of me and not giving up on me. I've thought it through. Even if it's not for myself, for you, I should be strong and live well." Zhao Lu did not say anything. He just lay on his sister's lap. When he was young, he would act like a spoiled child and listen to his sister's stories. Then, the stories would bring him to sleep. Zhang Xiaoqin patted his head and laughed. "You're already so old, yet you're still acting like a spoiled child. Let me do it for a while?" Zhao Lu whispered as if he was begging. Zhang Xiaoqin did not say anything. She stroked Zhao Li's hair. Zhao Lu seemed to have thought of something. "Oh right, sis, it's your birthday soon. Let's go out for a good meal that day? Just make it at home. Don't waste it." Zhang Xiaoqin shook her head. "You really love me. Don't make me feel guilty anymore, okay?" "Okay. Then I'll come back early. Then, I'll make a good meal together." Zhao Lu nodded. The siblings chatted for a long time. When Zhang Xiaoqin was tired and naturally fell asleep, Zhao Lu carried her to the bed and covered her with a blanket. He turned off the lights and went out. Then, he returned to his room. He turned on the desk lamp and looked at the calendar on the table. There was a date circled in red on the notebook. It was circled a long time ago. Perhaps he had been waiting for this day for a long time. However, the good things did not come until this day. He hoped to see his sister's smile, but it came earlier than this. Zhao Lu sighed softly. It felt good. He suddenly remembered something. He quickly took out his school bag and took out the silver pistol from it. Then, he looked at the small card. He quickly picked up his phone and opened the social media app. He scrolled all the way until he selected the blank profile picture and entered the chat interface. He held the phone in one hand and the pistol in the other. He seemed to be thinking about something. After a while, Zhao Lu shook his head. He tore the small card into pieces and threw it on the trash can. He took a box and shook his head again. He put the silver pistol inside and then stuffed it on the top of the closet. After washing up, Zhao Lu went to bed with his clothes on. He had a good sleep. During class, the lecture hall was usually full of students. However, this time, a rather old teacher came into the lecture hall. Everyone looked at the old lecturer strangely. They all knew his identity. He was at the level of the deputy director. "Students, Teacher Gao has taken a day off today. I'll be your substitute." Lecturer Gao Wen took a day off. Well, there was no way to take a day off because of something. However, some students knew that Gao Wen seemed to have something on his mind these days. It seemed to be expected that he would take a day off. In the cemetery, Gao Wen wore a black suit and held a bouquet of flowers in his hand. He walked through the many tombstones until he stopped on one of them. Putting the flowers on the tombstone, Gao Wen put his hands together in front of him. He lowered his head and was silent for a moment. Looking at the engraved words on the tombstone, Gao Wen suddenly smiled. "You didn't like to eat when you were alive. I didn't know what to bring you. I don't know what's wrong with my people. I can't tell the difference between real and fake." Gao Wen slowly sighed. "But don't worry, your family is doing well. I won't let anything happen to your family. But your wife is a troublemaker. But you don't have to worry. Those brothers of yours are all capable people. With them looking after them, I won't be able to find a place to make a move even if I want to. The only thing I could do was to ask the traffic police to make an exception for old Ma every time he came with a ticket. But recently there are no more tickets, so it's a lot easier." There was no one around. It was not a suitable day for worship. Gawain sat down with his back to the tombstone as if he was chatting with an old friend. It's already been 4 years. I've been teaching for 3.5 years, right? Actually, I'm really not suited to be a police officer. Teaching is more suitable for me. Luochi, I admire you my whole life. You're the kind of person who can carry out your beliefs to the end. You're indomitable and without any hesitation. Maybe it's because of this that you can gather so many people around you. Even I am unknowingly infected by you? There's a devil hiding in my heart. I think I can't defeat it in my life, ever since I decided to do this from the beginning. I've seen your son these days, but I don't think I've seen him. Even now, I'm not sure if the first time your son appeared and asked me something was real or fake. Sometimes I feel that I'm a really fragile person. He turned around and looked at the words engraved on the tombstone. Tell me, when can I be as strong as you say? But don't worry, you're perfect. He slowly stood up and faced the tombstone. I'll come to see you next time. I really want to have a drink with you in a small place after we're done with the case. Come with the heart when you see someone, leave with half of it, and next time. The car stopped at the entrance of the cemetery. Zhou Yuxing rubbed his hands and got out of the car with a bouquet of flowers. He wore sunglasses and looked around. The surroundings were covered with a layer of yellow. When he walked up the stairs and arrived at the destination, he saw a bouquet of flowers placed here. The cemetery was managed by someone, and there would be someone cleaning the offerings every day. Who came? Zhou Yuxing looked around, but he didn't see anyone. He didn't even see the janitor. Zhou Yuxing was silent for a moment. He quietly put down the flowers and said softly, Captain Luo, I've been busy recently. I'll come to see you next time and report to you. Until he returned to the place where he parked his car, Zhou Yuxing didn't see anything. He really couldn't find who had come before him. Come with the heart when you see someone, leave with all of them. Otherwise, you can't leave. The second strange death happened. This time, the suspects were the other 3 men who were in the same car as Chang Xiao. If there was anyone who had the ability to kill someone by shooting from the front without penetrating the windshield and windows, it could only be the people who were in the car with him. The 3 people in the car had been detained and were constantly being interrogated, but they didn't admit it. However, the way they died was the same as the one in the detention center. No bullet was found in the skull. Such a strange thing still couldn't be explained. It seemed possible that the murderer was the same person. Chang Zhao's case was soon stopped by Bureau Chief Lu. He contacted Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao again. As for Sir Ma, although he was a little angry, he was still investigating the dismembered body case. Moreover, there was one more victim, Wu Rong. At this time, it was not wise to divert his attention, although Ma Haud was very suspicious of the people from the province, who claimed that they were investigating. On the other side, Team 1 and Team 2 were investigating Wang Liang and Wu Rong's cases. These 2 cases had been merged into one. On the other side, Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao also started to deal with Chang Zhao's case and started to feel troubled. The reason why they were troubled was that if this incident was really done by a transcendent, then it was a bit too much. If the transcendent killed those who had committed the most heinous crimes, then the agency would not be able to do anything about it. Most of the time, they would just turn a blind eye to it. However, if it happened one after another, then it would be an insult to Xian. When one of the people in the detention center died, it could be said that it happened in the detention center, and only a few people knew about it. But this Chang Xiao, to put it bluntly, killed someone in a busy city, although most people thought that he died in a car accident. However, this was the second case, and there might be more in the future. This was not something that the agency could really tolerate. Besides, after the Mount Tai incident, the agency's attitude toward Kelowna and the Taoist and monster realm had become a little subtle. Brother Hao, where are we going? After leaving the place where the body was examined, Lu Mingho looked at the information in his hand and drove away, but he didn't go back to the dormitory where he worked. We're going to meet this guy called Qian Er, Lu Mingho said casually. Wei Zidao was stunned. Qian Er? He had read the report written by the police at the time, so he was even more confused. What's there to see about this Qian Er? The information said that he was beaten up and drunk. He didn't have the ability to fight at all. No matter what, he was the last person who came into contact with Chang Shao, Lu Mingho thought and said, according to normal people's knowledge, Qian Er doesn't have the ability to fight. However, this incident is very strange at the beginning. Can we still deal with it normally? Brother Hao, you suspect that this Qian Er has abilities? Wei Zidao frowned. In the agency's intranet, there were all kinds of inquiries all the time. They were all uploaded by agents from all over the country in real time, so that the agents in the agency could gain more knowledge and deal with more unexpected incidents. Wei Zidao couldn't help but think of the most discussed thing in the past few days. Among ordinary people, there were more and more cases of abilities. At first, there were only a few newborns, but yesterday there was an example of someone who could absorb metal. Although there were cases of so-called superpowers in the world, most of them were some kind of mutation of the body. There were billions of people in the world, so it was acceptable for 1 or 2 people to have a mutation of the body. However, this person who could absorb metal was not the same as the reported cases. He really had some kind of ability. Maybe he suddenly had the ability, even he didn't know. Lu Mingho shook his head and said, maybe he is just an ordinary person. But according to the current situation, there are no more clues, so we can only try our luck. Okay, here we are.